Hey, this is Shit Shooting Sunday. We're doing this again. Welcome back to Shit Shooting Sunday. Um, it's starting a little late because fucking Facebook. Okay, so I tag people in posts on Facebook when I'm about to do something like this so that I can get as much feedback as possible from as many different types of people as possible. And anybody who knows me knows that I've been doing that for fucking years. But for some reason, today was the day Facebook chose to make their presence known as fucking fascists in my life. And they specifically would not let me post this thing in that way. They are blocking an anti-feminist video stream. They are blocking me from being able to spread what I think is the truth. They are motherfuckers, and I'm extremely angry right now for that reason. So it should be a fairly entertaining stream because I'm not in the mood for pulling punches. I'm in the mood for fucking people up, and Facebook has put me in that mood. If you're interested in following me on Facebook, you can do that by going to facebook.com/insanityisfree and tweet with the hashtag #FuckFacebook to let them know what you think of this. Because I have proof with screenshots that they are actively suppressing that post. It's one of the most recent posts. Today is the 17th of June, 2017. And they're suppressing my ability to tag large numbers of people in a post. And I think probably this link as well. I'm going to test that right now and see if they're actively suppressing this link. One moment. Let me get this thing there we go. So I fucking opened up the link in another window and I could hear my voice all of a sudden. It's even more annoying in person. I'm going to post this on Facebook relatively soon. Just the normal housekeeping now that I'm done bitching about Facebook, because fuck you, Facebook. Eat a dick and die. Now I can get to the normal housekeeping and the actual normal stream. So we have a couple more people coming in, and we have the opportunity for many more people to come in. So this could be a very good stream, and it could last well all the stream, especially since I've got a shit ton of anti-feminist sentiment myself that I picked it up. Happy Father's Day to all of the fathers out there, and I hope you're having a great Father's Day, especially you, Dad, because you've been going through some shit recently, and if you are listening to this stream, I hope you're well. I'm going to give you a call afterward. But the normal housekeeping is... this is brought to you by Liberty Mugs. Mugs that you can use to piss off your co-workers and tell them the truth at the same time, all while consuming your favorite fluids. So you can go check them out by the link in the description. I'm going to need all the help I can get if these platforms, because Twitter was suppressing me the other day too. So if you decide that you want to assist me before they completely decide to disallow me from using their platforms, then I would definitely appreciate you using any of these services. Also brought to you by Brave Browser, an ad-resistant, tracker-resistant browsing experience with its own creator support system known as the Basic Attention Token. They use that. It's a cryptocurrency, and you can trade it. And you can also just pay creators like me directly if you have the Brave Browser installed. Also, CryptoTab. If you don't use Brave Browser but still use a Chrome-based browser, you can install this extension to use spare CPU power to mine Bitcoin. But that out of the way, there are many other ways to support me in the description. There's a link at the bottom to all of the ways that you can do that. It's an ever-expanding list. If you decide that you want to affiliate with my extremist ass for some reason, then let me know. I am open to affiliate opportunities. We have 4 viewers right now, so that's a pretty good start, comparatively speaking. And I hope to get many more. So share this link with your friends and see if you can get this conversation going. Because also, fuck feminism. Fuck feminism and fuck Facebook. We're about to have a fantastic stream. So The people here in no particular order, feel free to start introducing yourself and letting people know where they can find you, and there'll probably be more people coming in a little bit.
Hello. Do you want to go first? Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Teflon X5 from That Gamer Bird. I basically just play fucking video games. I used to really be into politics. Now I'm just here as guests. Fucking what up? How you doing? Chirp chirp, motherfucker. And yeah, if you want, you can go check out my channel. I'm basically just here to help people forget about real life.
I am Idiot's Query. I'm the idiot with queries and opinions and shit. You can find me on Twitter. That's where I'm most active right now. I have a YouTube, Idiot's Query. Pretty much universally, Idiot's Query. I'm trying to build up a little social network I have going. I talk shit, and I try to use as much logic as possible.
Hey, Lupinate, go ahead.
Okay. Lupinate, the Anarchic Wolf. You can find me on Steam at G+ is Dan Atfield, or Lupinate on Minds and Discord, which I'm now getting a lot more into, to be fair.
And this is Finian. I'm mainly on Steemit these days as FINNIAN, and you can find me on other sites as Liberty Pro PI. That's the business account that I use.
All right, sick. So, the first order of business, let's get each of your perspectives on what modern feminism is. It can be as short or long as you want, because we got time today. So,
feminism is cancer.
It's some people seeking special rights over others. That would be my short answer.
Idiot's Query stole mine, unfortunately. Modern feminism is a bit of a cancer. Original feminism was fine. Yeah, women should have the exact same rights as everybody else. That I have no problem with.
You know, funny thing.
That's as far as I'm willing to go.
Funny thing, original feminism wasn't even about that. They were demanding rights that men didn't necessarily have, because the only reason men had the right to vote and women didn't was because men were generally property holders, and so there weren't that many female property holders, and they were upset about that. So they wanted their rights that men didn't already have. But some other people stepped in, said, "Hey, not unless you give men the right too," and yeah, everyone just kind of settled. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's always, or it even began as a good thing, but damn if it hasn't gone real downhill now.
Yeah, my real opinion on feminism is that it is cancer. However, I do see some merits that they have brought, of course, but the whole premise behind feminism these days is not equality, and that's the whole issue.
I know it is equality. It absolutely is equality. That is exactly what they're looking for. It's just not equality of opportunity or equality of choice. It's an equality of outcome.
Well, no, like even the name isn't the inequality. Like the name itself proves that they're not striving for equality at all.
They're not even,
and like,
yeah, they want equity of outcome, not equality of outcome. And I think that that's applicable and different.
Well, yeah, like the reason I say that it's not about equality, but just the name itself is the femme part.
To be fair, no, you are correct. They're not.
Yeah,
full,
and like because no.
Equal. They are full pro one side.
See,
just like all the isms.
And here's the problem. When you start looking at well, we're pro one side too. We're pro non-archism. I mean, realistically, everybody's biased, and I have no problem with that. But feminism parrots lines of equality, and it always has. But it's never. And this is my opinion on it, because I wanted to get everybody else's first. I don't think it was ever really good. I think that fundamentally it always missed the point, which was that the reason society was set up the way it was that the people willing to take the responsibility made the rules. Whether those rules were kind to those who didn't or not was separate. But realistically, like fundamentally, the reason men have always been in power is because men have always been making rules for men who were the powerful ones. And the men, as long as they got to enjoy parts of the power structure, were okay sacrificing huge chunks of their humanity and their rights in order to do so. Sort of like the biblical stories about people becoming eunuchs and being fine with it because the king at least didn't kill them. You know, I mean, and all this stuff about like how there was no equality, so that was the problem, fails to understand how they got there. It fails to understand how they got to that position to begin with. And in doing so, it creates this power dichotomy where women are trying to go against men. And that's really fucking toxic. I mean, yeah, maybe women. I mean, yeah, maybe women didn't get to vote. Sure, that's fair. But what's not fair is women voting and also not being an equal amount of coal miners, not being an equal amount of, you know, loggers, of crab fishermen, of soldiers, of any of the most dangerous positions in society, and then trying to claim that they should have the ability to have influence over the entirety of society while men still essentially carry the weight. That's not equality, that's privilege. That's getting a higher status and creating a new class of essentially feminist oligarchs. And so I oppose that hugely. I'm done, by the way. Anybody can go ahead. I've said my piece.
Okay.
Well, I agree with you there, Jeremiah, for sure.
I have no problem with the concept of only property owners having some say in their government, when, of course, the government has absolute control over said property. And it wouldn't necessarily mean if you're a female or a male, and regardless of your ethnic background. That seems to me to make actual decent sense. But then, of course, I don't really like voting for anything as an anarchist, so it gets worse than that the more you think about it.
I mean, the logic of the property owner being the only one with the ability to vote was founded on property rights. Because if you've got property, then you should be able to decide what your property is done with by the state.
Isn't your body your property?
Yes, technically it is. However, don't go down that road. It's far too complicated an issue. It's too reductive to just use that one argument. I know what you're going to try and push, so don't try it. That's not for this stream. This is Father's Day, remember?
See, here's the problem with the entire thing, though. It wasn't designed to protect private property. Most people, much less most, men, didn't have property when these rules were made. So,
I'm not claiming it's protecting private. This was designed to protect private property.
This was designed to protect an essential rulership element from the from the days of being ruled by a king, because effectively every president has been at least partially royal blood, and they've been that way for a reason, and that reason is that that the U.S. was never truly fundamentally divorced from British politics, and it was certainly never divorced from it in terms of the relationship between people and property, which is why women and cultural minorities were not allowed to own property, and why poor white people, white trash, which is where that term came from, were also not allowed to own property, because it was still trying to, basically have a kingship ruler society. I mean, you can say
nobody wanted the peasants getting power, did they? Can't have these filthy peasants around, honestly.
So I mean,
get back on your place, peon.
Right. So what I'm saying is that everybody had a bad rap. It wasn't just women, and that's why I hate that sort of start of feminism, because it's sort of like me, and it's not really looking at history.
No, I the problem is that Nobody looks at history, mate. If people actually looked at history, we wouldn't probably be in the situations we're in. Everybody says you can see where things went wrong by looking at history, and you can. It's just nobody bothers to, or they look, but they don't see.
Well, right, but that doesn't change what history was.
No, true, but the data is factual. The interpretation is subjective.
Well, the data is subjective too, because it was gathered in a rather subjective way. But
he's right. Jeremiah's
to
right.
Some extent, to some extent, the data is subjective.
Nothing is truly objective. True objectivity, 100% impartiality is impossible. Even AIs that try it are still created by humans and therefore flawed. So, I mean, either way,
physics
what?
and physical sciences, those don't quite apply to that, because when you're talking about data in that, it's just interpretation that goes wrong.
Except that the metrics by which the experiments are conducted are still biased, which means that your data could still lead you to the wrong conclusion.
That's still an interpretation issue.
It's basic anthropology that science is truth without certainty, yo.
No, I know science is truth without certainty, but that's the point. It's interpretation of truth. You can take two people can look at the same event and come up with two completely different interpretations of what event actually occurred.
That's correct, but one of them is closer to the truth, and that's the point of science, is to say that most likely everything is at least partially wrong, and we're going to whittle it down.
Yes, but science is based on the idea that logic determines what is true given data. That is basically the essence of science.
It's not given data, it's given experimentation. Data is the result of experimentation, and it has to have a good basis in order to be truly
strictly speaking. Yeah, but the point is, if you conduct an experiment, you conduct the experiment to get data. It's not the conducting of the experiment that determines whether or not you are correct. It is the data. So the experimentation process is important. It is the data that matters.
Here's the problem, yo. If you have enough data, and I don't want to get lost in the weeds here any more than we already have, but if you have data that's created by poor experimentation with poor parameters, you're going to have data that might confirm what somebody else said if it was included as part of a broader set from better experimentation. Truly, the purpose of science isn't to get data. The purpose of science is to refine experimentation so that the data is better. It's not, it's not to get data. If you can get data that says anything, that's a statistical fallacy wrapped up in like a misinterpretation of what science is for.
I thought the purpose of science was to seek and establish and verify the truth.
Yes.
Yeah, it's to verify the data, not to say that it's just seeking the data is wrong. It's to verify what data is relevant. All data is value.
So it's not just to get data. But it's not just to get data.
Science requires data.
But it's not just
get around that fact.
But it's not just to get data. You can't get around that fact.
No, I'm not, and I didn't. No, it's not what I was claiming. I said what I said
was the purpose of science is to get data.
The data is truth. No, what I originally said was, Jeremiah, the data is truth. Interpretations are flawed. If you interpret data wrong, you build experiments that are wrong.
I think if we watch this stream, that you'll find that you said that the purpose of science is to get data. But either way,
no, I didn't.
But either way,
if I did, that I misspoke.
Okay, but that's what I've been. That's what I've been arguing with.
I misspoke, but what I led with was the purpose that in order you can have as much data as you want, and it could potentially all be true. The results are not necessarily just the data. The results are the interpretation of the data. The data could be telling you jack shit. There is no signal, nothing to report. And you could interpret that as something significant is going on because I see a correlation.
Right, but the real purpose of science
is pseudoscience.
But the real purpose of science is not generally data-driven. The real purpose of science is to refine experimentation to get better data in the future.
And actually, let me bring us back to feminism real quick. Too.
Yeah.
I can bring this back to feminism. Don't worry about it. Okay, so on the subject of science too, so you have social sciences, right? We have sociology, all the other good shit, psychology, and so feminism these days, especially the intellectual force of it, or pseudo-intellectual, I like to say. The force of the feminist movement in the social sciences is that they gather data and they have statistics. For me, I don't believe statistics mean fuck all. Statistics usually are formed around an opinion, or the opinion is made through faulty data because humans are flawed. You cannot have a perfect data gathering on human behavior. And that's the biggest issue we have here, which is why psychology is constantly on it's constantly contradicting itself for the most part. It grew and then it started
agree with
flipping on itself. Yeah, and then so same with sociology, right? You have certain groups, you can understand how certain groups do things, but you can't for certain say that this is going to happen all the time, especially with people, okay? And that's the hardest problem. So when feminists try to say that, oh, it's all a patriarch and all of this and all that crap, they're going off of faulty data gathering, and they're also building a narrative that they are the victim, which is kind of bullshit these days, because like, no, they're not a fucking victim. And they build
they basically cherry pick. This is the problem. Exactly. All of the groups that try and say your rights are less important than my feelings or my desire for a privilege are all based around either cherry picking data or a false cause fallacy or a false dilemma. One of those three usually is in play, or circular reasoning. That's sort of like the basic fallback guy.
Well, or straw man. Like there's a constant chant that I'm sure I'm gonna get from somebody sometime at some point for saying that daring to say that I'm an anti-feminist, which is the racist, sexist, MRA, go away. I mean, it's always gotta connect it to something else.
Yeah,
and then attack a position and then attack a position that the person doesn't have. Like I would say, if anything, straw man is the primary tool of the modern feminist and maybe even classical feminism.
I would agree that is the primary tool for rebuttal, but not necessarily for making their argument in its initial case.
Why?
It's definitely for rebuttal. Because they'll tend to, that's a good question, actually.
Because what is feminism but a rebuttal? What is feminism except a response to a culture that they believed didn't like?
Yes, but they still have to have a fundamental theory to fall back on. Their initial argument
that their fundamental theory is patriarchy theory, and that is a fundamentally false theory.
Agreed, and that's a false cause. But is a false cause a straw man?
I mean, it is if you use it to specifically attack a position your opponent doesn't hold. I mean, if your opponent would be fine with women getting equal rights and treatment if they, did the same things that men did, and you say that, because my pink razor, which has a huge amount more features than their straight razor, costs more, I'm being charged more, or because the job where I don't compete for higher wages and do less work and certainly less dangerous work exists, somehow you don't care about women because you support that. But maybe the people don't support that, and fundamentally the argument's a straw man because men just want women to pull their weight if they're going to get the same things that men get as a result and reward of pulling their weight.
I'm not denying that. What I'm trying to get across is that if you, regarding Idiot's Query's statement on gender studies, yes, it is all basically cherry-picked data to justify some sort of premise that is 100% false.
Like wage gap.
Because, like the wage gap, like the concept of, don't get me wrong, it may happen, and it probably does. Yeah, it probably does happen in specific examples, usually in a corporate environment. But those kinds of things do exist.
Domestic violence statistics.
Well, yeah, and like here's also the thing too. It's not only just cherry picking. It's also the fact that they don't take into account human human fault. They don't take into that account at all. It's nothing, or human choice, anything like that.
No, they don't
like,
take into account individuals. That's why.
Yeah, at all. They say it's for individuality. They say it's for the women empowerment. Yeah, be empowered, whatever, but don't expect more because you're empowered. I can be empowered, doesn't mean I expect things. You're expecting things. Don't expect shit. That's the problem you're having. You're expecting an outcome. You shouldn't expect.
No, they're
an outcome
trying to
if you,
force
if you try to make one.
empowerment.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's not strawman them. They're trying to force empowerment for women.
Okay.
Well, isn't
That's
that
the
what
point. It's the difference between promoting self-empowerment, self-responsibility, promoting women to do things for themselves.
Here's part of the problem, though, because realistically speaking, the history of politics is trying to seek power by force. So realistically speaking, when you have a political movement that's trying to, quote, empower people, they're trying to get people to say, you should cede certain, rights and responsibilities to us in exchange for a certain amount of our power being delegated to you and your cause. And so, realistically speaking, feminism in its, sight to empower women effectively tries to disempower men because they fail to understand and appreciate how power actually works and where it comes from, which is why they think in a lot of modern contexts that racism and sexism and all these other isms are prejudice plus power, and why they want to redefine shit to that, because then they can completely ignore everything that they have and everything that they've gained by power, and they can say, well, because we don't have as much political power, because the government isn't giving us what we want from you, from the people who are working, from the people who are actively being stolen from by taxation the most, we get to use physical force against you by proxy through the government. And realistically, that's a huge problem that they won't encounter, they won't address, because they want that power, they want that upper hand. That's why they redefine shit, that's why they cherry pick data and statistics, that's why they strawman their opponents, calling them racist and shit, because essentially they want political power, and they're unwilling to stop until they're in charge. They want to be the government. They want to flip the script on history, and instead of like rewriting a newer, better one, they want to get the same thing that existed in history, only this time in favor of women. They're fucking scum.
Yeah, have you guys read the books, the Dark Elf trilogy by R.A. Salvatore? I love that fucker. Anyway, he writes the Dark Elves have, well, where Dritz is from, is a monarchy, right? Or not a monarchy. It's the women version of fucking patriarchy. What is that?
Gynarchy.
Yeah, he's part of that shit, right? He's growing up in like women rule everything about all of it. And so what's really kind of funny is that Dark Elves are evil, of course, and some could argue that so are women. But what goes on in there is that there was zero way for men to do anything. Men were literally the fighters, the protectors, everything like that. But they were ruled under the women. So the men literally did all the heavy lifting, while the women sat back and did whatever the fuck they wanted to. And men were essentially their slaves. Which I think some of them might have read those books, and were like, "Oh yeah, this is a great idea too. We should probably add this in there." But that's also part of their whole agenda. They just, at first, they wanted to see, I guess, in some aspects, they wanted to be on equal plane because they weren't. That's totally fine, but they shouldn't have said feminism. They should have gone with, "Hey, we're all people. Why not make it all of us do the same thing?"
Well, right, and
property right.
And a term has existed for what feminists claim to want for a really fuck long time, and that's called egalitarian. And by the way, I'll get into that later because I'm super evil. I hate egalitarianism too, but I'll get to that later.
Wow.
Word, and you're absolutely correct, because egalitarianism is the right word for what they wanted.
And it existed for like probably, at least 4 decades before, what we would consider modern feminism. And first wave feminism. And modern feminism is so far away from egalitarian theory that essentially they just want to get fucked regularly and not have to deal with the consequences. That's what they want.
Just look at the definition. It means equality.
Mm-hmm. Well, and they would ignore then the definition of anarchy that means no government and just say it's chaos, but give us our Hillary or we'll shoot you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Finian.
take it back a little further in time too, when the days when women were warriors too, and women fought in wars and they defended their village the same way a man does. You know, I don't think the women of today are necessarily fighting for that type of equality. I wish they were. I think women should be just as much warriors as men are, and they should be willing to take up arms to defend what's right and what they love too.
Oh yeah, women are just as capable.
But now we got all
that's
these.
Not what they're asking for these days. Of course, you know, they want all the benefits, and they don't want any of the responsibility.
Well, and now we've got this hyper intersectionality where, like, you have to have your particular kind of fascist little fucking niche of feminism, and now we've got, like, fat positive feminists, which basically ignore, like, the history of feminism in order to make their points. You know, we should be able to live fat off the land, you know, keep on, you know, ballooning up a few sizes, and you shouldn't be able to complain about us at all, or you're being oppressive, you know, shit like that. You know, because feminism has just split into a huge amount of fractional fucking bullshit movements.
Well, here's a funny little anecdote. It's kind of funny that you bring that up. Is like they want to be, you know, fat and living free and all that good shit, and they really hate capitalism because capitalism is part of the patriarchy, but capitalism allowed them to get fat and free, and so I don't really understand their fucking logic on that.
Well, I mean, but go ahead.
These days, women can be entrepreneurs. They can be independently wealthy. They can create systems of income and passive income and develop businesses and sell them. I mean, like, there's nothing holding them back. I mean, for anybody to say basically that it's an unfair playing field, they're not accurately portraying the situation as it is. Because if you work hard and you are a subject expert and you do all the right things, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. You're going to prosper from it. It's not like I'm not holding anybody back. I mean, come on.
And here's the problem though. The whole idea of feminism in its inception and to now has been hugely hypocritical, because you want to talk about, like, saying that capitalism is the patriarchy and patriarchy is capitalism and we should smash both. Well, you know, and while getting the benefits of that, well, the same thing can be said for men in general, because the same thing can be said for men who have been responsible for basically building society and then, you know, being shat on by women who want the benefits of that society at this point and want that maintained and to continue to grow at its current rate to keep them comfortable, but they don't want the coal mining jobs. They don't want the really dangerous jobs that you would have to take in order to get true equality. They just want the result because they're fucking cunts.
Well, this actually goes back into the family dynamic, right? And so if you think about it, like, because women are differently biological and of course, like, shit like that, right? So I can see why they don't want to, but they totally can do those jobs. I know plenty of women. When I was training, when I train women, I tell them that they can take down a 300-pound man even if they're a fucking stick. It's all physics. You can still size does not matter in combat, right? So also,
seen it
kind of does.
Skill and
it kind of does.
But, right.
Yeah. It's a whole bunch of shit, right, when it comes to hand-to-hand combat. And so that's one of my big focuses. I'm like, no, women, you know, they may be physically weaker and things like that and all that crazy shit, whatever you want to say, but they can still do just as much as a man can. The thing that makes us different than all other primates and all other beasts and animals is that we have our brain. And so our brain allows us to do certain things that our bodies cannot physically do. We can create shit to do those things that are heavier, like create fulcrums and shit like that, right? Use physics. And that's the whole part of it. They can still use physics or create a different way. Mathematicians, whatever. There's plenty of brilliant women out there who are mathematicians, right? Physicists, all that good shit. So they have the capacity to do it. They just don't want to do how men do it, which, biologically speaking, they can do it just by hand, you see? And so the whole issue is that they don't want to, the feminists, anyway, don't want to do that themselves. They'd rather say, oh, well, it doesn't
they want
matter
to get their
because
hands
I'm still being
dirty.
oppressed.
They don't want to get their hands dirty.
I'm not certain we can just put that all on feminism, though.
Why?
Well, no, it's not all on feminism either.
Because
there
it's
are
not
some
just
men who say no.
Yeah, there's a
There
lot
are some
of
misogynists
people.
for sure, I'm not saying that their misogyny does not exist. Of course, are men who are out there who think that women are jack shit. And that, of course, is an issue. But that's not the only issue they're battling. They're saying that all men are inherently misogynistic these days.
No, I know.
No.
That's wrong. And
Yeah.
that is basically a composition division fallacy.
Yeah, exactly.
It is basically because one is all or is not always true.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like, they don't see the separation between, like, okay, there are some men who really hate women, or they don't even hate them, let's say. They just think of them as lesser beings, right? You can still think of something as a lesser being and not hate it, right? And that's still being misogynistic. It still fits the definition, right? It's still showing a prejudice against someone else for their gender, okay? And so when they bring that up, it's like, oh, well, because you're a man, you're going to be hateful, or you're going to be automatically better than a woman. It's like, no. Our brains dictate that that's not true. Our physical bodies dictate that we can do separate things, for sure, of course, but also our brains allow us to do other things. You can't say that because you are a man, you're always going to see women as under you. Well, I will in the sack, but even then, I like women on top of me sometimes. But that's not the point, right? So, like, so anyway,
always has to boil down to a sex joke, doesn't it?
Of course, dude. Come on.
The only thing a woman can do that a man can't do is have a baby. Are we really going to go there?
Well, and not to mention the fact that, like, realistically, there's probably going to be a way to engineer that sort of thing in the future.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, we're very close to the point where a womb won't be needed. So this whole argument is going to really go out the window.
And realistic, like, because they're working on artificial wombs for things like sheep. They just did a proof of concept that had the first ever sheep grown entirely in a lab.
Yep. This shit can be done.
Yeah, it's part of the craziness too, because women can pretty much literally do everything a man can do, and more. They can have a baby. So, like, why are you complaining? Come on now.
Well, and more they can have a baby, and less they can't grow a magnificent beard or do a good job on most heavy manual labor.
Have you seen? Hang on.
I've seen some women that can do some serious manual labor, man. Come on.
Yeah, okay, and most of them don't, because most of them are very small.
There are some women out there that also, specifically, I'm thinking of the Soviet East German wrestling, women's wrestling and heavy lifting team that definitely could grow facial hair. It was well commented on these many occasions. So
right, but if we're talking about what women can do, then we shouldn't talk about. If we're talking about what women can do, then we shouldn't talk about like a few specific women. We should be talking about women in general. And women in general are weaker. They're better at caregiving, but worse at fighting. They're better at child rearing, but worse at nurturing and being there and being a good patient teacher, but worse at, for instance, hunting.
Which is why these points, though, they're all based on the collectivist concept, the fact that a group statistic can be applied to all. Let's not use their logic to try and validate their...
No, fuck that. Collectivism is subordinating the will of the individual to the collective. Using collective terms is not inherently collectivist. What the fuck?
No, I'm not saying that it's inherently collectivist.
You said it is collectivist, and saying that is using their terms.
I'm saying that the system of using basically thinking of things in groups does nothing to further the argument against feminism, because it continues the argument as a concept within groups.
Except that it doesn't, because feminism doesn't care about that sort of thing. Realistically, you couldn't make
hang on.
You hang on. You first off, you've interrupted me like fucking 5 times in this stream so far. So either way, let me just make this real clear. Feminists are very well entrenched in their ideology, and they're also in a shrinking ideology because people are realizing how full of shit they are. But that is happening because people are poking holes in their logic using their reasoning. Realistically speaking, feminism is a shrinking concept because people are using their terms against them. So if I can prove that on a whole, women aren't working as hard as men, women aren't in as much danger as men, but women are still asking for the same amount of result that men get for doing those things, then I can prove by using their terms, as you want to call them, their terms, that, like, essentially feminists are trying to get a new power dynamic and they're not trying to abolish shit.
So
Look,
the only
yeah,
reason
essentially-
you're discussing things in terms of groups is to argue against the use of terms of groups because it doesn't work. Is
No,
that what
I
we're
didn't say that
basically-
though. You're
No, I'm
strawmanning me.
asking I'm asking a question. I'm
Okay,
trying
you're
to
Kathy
work
Newman
out.
strawmanning.
I'm trying to work out exactly the tactic that you're using.
What I'm using is
deal
a
with the problem.
what I'm using is a multi-pronged attack. I'm trying to say that even by their own reasoning, they suck ass.
Okay,
Yeah,
that I'll agree with 100% because their reasoning is inherently flawed
Hold on a
because
second.
it is a collectivist ideology.
Exactly. Yeah. So basically, the collectivists are arguing that there can't be any diversity, there can't be any inequality, there can't be any differences in skills and abilities. They want us all to be equal, which is an absolute joke. Men to women will never be equal. Men to men will never be equal. It's not possible. Everybody is created unequal, and we all have different strengths and weaknesses. And yeah, that's definitely their goal. They want us all to be equal, and anything that goes
They
against
want
that,
us all
they're gonna-
homogenous and the same.
Yep, correct. And they want us that way because that gives the most amount of power to people in charge, basically.
Hey,
To
by the
keep
way,
things under control.
so we got two things to say. First off, make sure to mute your mic when you're not talking. Second off, Cillian, Ocelon, why don't you introduce yourself, let people know where they can find you, and let people know what you think of what's been said so far, because you said on Facebook you wanted to get in on this stream, so.
Yeah, sure. So my channel's name is Ocelon Abstractions. There's a whole backstory behind that name that we can get into some other time. So that's the name of my YouTube channel. Also, I'm involved with the Roads to Freedom Foundation. We just had a successful event called the Unconvention in Omaha, Nebraska, and then we're looking forward to a whole lot of other exciting events and our website, which is underway as well. Now, in terms of the discussion, I haven't caught it from the very beginning, but I did notice part of the discussion was, centered kind of around scientific principles. And I did want to kind of point out, which I actually mentioned in the chat, that really just the fact that feminist discourse is not cited or, subject to peer review like scientific works are, that it really is more in the realm of politics and philosophy than anything concrete,
Right.
like hard science.
I'd say that's being generous.
And also, of course, when they do use hard science, it's always very soft hard science. Like, realistically, like the rape statistics, the rain statistics were badly phrased questions that resulted in shit data that they used to apply to everyone when their data set was from one college campus. It was fucking dumb, but somehow, I shouldn't say somehow, that's very patronizing. People have spread it around because essentially they're very interested in their own side and they'll go with whatever data confirms it. And when you can say that 1 in 4 women or 1 in 3 or whatever the fucking dumbass under 5 statistic that they say are raped on a college campus, and you don't have to explain that because anything anybody questioning that is questioning the listen and believe narrative, questioning the fucking asinine principles that they put out. It's not about science, it's about you and your objectives.
I've seen claims as high as 60 to 80% with the most radical feminists of women being victims of rape.
Yeah. It's fucking pathetic. And not to mention that, but then they try and say that they're on the side of science because essentially their science professors agree with them because they don't want to go against the current university SJW narrative. And everybody's like, listen and believe, and if you don't, you're part of the problem. We should get you fired. And you know, anybody that goes against the narrative is that the SJWs are painting is considered an opponent of justice and is like held under kangaroo courts and really mock trials that are treated seriously, and they're thrown out on a rail because of bullshit.
Well, on one benefit on that front, mate, I read today Lindsay Shepherd is suing Wilfrid Laurier.
Yeah, well, I mean, good luck with
discrimination and about £3 million or Canadian dollars even, which
okay.
I know that's like nothing, but still.
I mean, good luck with that, but at the same time, most of these cases happen on a daily basis. That's one case, and these are global universities that still push this fucking narrative. So even if she wins, she's not making any points or any friends. The only thing she's doing is getting what she rightly should, what's rightly owed. But, you know, if she wins, she's not helping the mass issue. And if she loses, she's not helping the mass issue. And either way, the only thing that's going to help this is when people start to take personal responsibility instead of diverting it onto politicians and government to do their fucking dirty work for them because they're petty little peasants fighting with each other.
Every good event helps on this issue, mate, to be quite frank. Every good event.
Okay. Helps in that marginal way. It might not result in greater freedom, though. What I'm saying is that, like, yeah, maybe this one thing might help in this one instance for this one person, but if the greater march is still happening, then we're not winning.
If a precedent is set, then there is, again, using the system against itself. You create a way of arguing in law that this is bullshit.
You create more loopholes that people can exploit.
Of law. Well, potentially. It depends on how the law is phrased. I will agree that the state can't make that law work because they have to give up power, and they don't like doing that once they get it. But that's a tangential issue. If we're talking just feminism, we're fighting more than just a political war here. We're fighting a culture war.
The culture war cannot be won by a lawyer. The culture war must be won by convincing people en masse that their culture is wrong. That needs to be fought with that needs to be fought with counterculture, not a legal precedent. That's just going to create more fervor and get the feminists to say that the state is a patriarchy and it's cracking down and we need to push harder. This is not helping. We need to win, not get these petty little, quote, victories.
Well, and the legal system will make sure that we lose. That's the whole point, of course.
Yeah,
there's that.
So this is all touching upon the concern of freedom of speech, because arguably, and maybe this is slightly devil's advocate, but arguably feminists, when they get someone milquetoast like a Ben Shapiro or whatever, deplatform, you know, they could say we're just exercising our right to free speech as well. And as far as a legal framework, that's correct. They have a legal right to scream and yell at people. But the concern is, how does freedom of speech work outside of a legal framework?
Okay. So you have freedom of speech, and they argue for freedom of speech, right? So the reason they try to deplatform anti-feminists or people who are against the idea of feminism is because they label it as hate speech. And hate speech, they say, is not protected speech, which is completely wrong, because it is. And the thing about that is that they try to say that, well, it's their speech is harming, it's causing incentive to cause violence against women and all that good shit, right? That's their essential argument. That anything against feminism is an argument for harm of women. And so that's where they try to go, and that's how it's going to be legally defined as well. That's how they want it to be legally defined. They want anything that is against their ideology to be incitement of hatred, or incitement of doing something, like how screaming fire in a crowded theater is enticements of having others act upon what you said, right? And so they believe that any idea against feminism is an attack on women and hateful in its own right.
So why isn't the right answer for anti-feminists to also manipulate legislation to their advantage.
Because
Well,
that's
Cycle
not
continues.
Yeah, what Lupinate said.
Well, and not to mention the fact that realistically speaking, we should be the counterexample if we're to be actual anti-feminists. Otherwise, the only thing they're going to do is continue pushing for their thing. Like if we want to be the counterexample to feminism, if we want to be truly anti-feminist and not help them in any way, we need to do this without the government.
Right.
In other words, we have to win the culture war.
Yes,
Yes,
but it's
okay, here, exactly. And also, feminism is just communism wearing a skirt.
yes.
Bingo.
I mean, it's all and people say that this is just a dumbass boogeyman word, but realistically, it's not. We're dealing with postmodern neo-Marxism, because, like, you know, Jordan Peterson has been maligned in the press for a really long time now for saying these sorts of things, but they're true. I mean, we can't talk about anything anymore because realistically, they're going to fucking legislate against you. They're going to, essentially call the cops on you.
Yeah, and they want to legislate hate speech, dude. That's what, at the end of the day, that's what they want to do. And they don't realize that by doing so, they're going to hurt themselves a fuckload more than they will help themselves. Like,
well, they've already done it in uni.
Yeah, exactly. And it's crazy because, like, any hate speech form, unless it directly says, like, only, like, it has to literally exclude men from the law. Like, it has to in order for it to work in their favor. And it won't do that because they can't have that, because that would be unconstitutional. In America, anyway. But that's the thing. That's what they would try to aim for, is that they would have to have exclusion in the law in order for their hate speech laws to have any kind of effect. But if they want it to be equal, they can't exclude anyone on that law, which will fucking hurt them. Because then you can say anything that they say is hate speech. Yeah.
I agree with you that under the Constitution in America, speech is protected. However, I would like to point out the following things. One, free speech zones. The government already heavily regulated free speech to death under the last administration. The only reason why the current administration hasn't tried it is because it'll probably get them kicked out. Two, bias response teams. The universities in the States, because they're private, are able to make their own law on their land.
No,
so
go on. Because the schools, most universities and everything like that, unless they are literally by themselves a private organization that take no government subsidies, they have to follow government law. Why? And how do I know this? Because I wanted to smoke the fuck out of some weed when I got to university, right? They're like, oh, we can't allow weed on here even if you have your thing because we're federally funded. Boom. They have to follow rules of the United States of America. If they are federally funded, they have to.
I think I am too physically exhausted to keep up with the conversation, so I'm gonna duck out for now.
Well, hey, just do us a favor and send it to a few folks before you do, like maybe in your Discord.
Yeah.
All right, well, be well.
All right, see you later.
Be well, mate.
Have a good night.
Yeah, I was wondering why he wasn't saying anything.
Probably wiped. I've been gaming a lot myself, so I can relate.
But here's the thing, and this is where I sort of start to sound fascist. So brace, but egalitarianism as a fundamental concept is bullshit because the laws of thermodynamics mean that nothing can be equal. Even when something reaches equilibrium, you get two opposing forces that are just equally opposing, and it's transient. It only lasts for a split, like less than a second, right? And so if nothing can physically be equal, then any movement ideologically pushing for equality is going to fail. And the feminists at the top of the ladder, I believe, fundamentally know this, and that's why they're not willing to, like, back down when people argue that they're arguing for more for more privileges and not equal rights, because they know that they're not arguing for equality and they don't care. They know that realistically equality is impossible and they don't care.
They mean equality in if you take history as kind of like, you know, just one temporal chunk, and that is they want to equalize things by inverting the power dynamic.
I mean, maybe, but even if that's the case, even if they're just trying to equalize the power dynamic, like, they're gonna do it by demanding special treatments now to try and equal the special treatments men get. And since men and women are biologically different, you know, shocker of shockers, let me just come out with that and say men and women are biologically different. And a third time for the people in the back, men and women are biologically different. You can't have an equalization of the privileges, you know, outcomes, or, you know, inputs in this equation. You have to acknowledge inequality, or you can't even get close to equality. So if you look at it from an issue of fundamentals, feminism cannot get what it claims to want if it's to be logical and also not hypocritical. So they can't get what they want and also get a reversed power dynamic, because that's going to involve injuring a lot of people with unequal power. And they know that. That's why they have restructured the definition that they want to force down our throats of anything ending in ism as plus power. Racism is prejudice of skin color plus power. You know, sexism is prejudice of anatomy plus power. You know, all of these things plus power, instead of what their definition was, which was just them, the power wasn't included, because that's what they're really after. They're after power, and so they had to fundamentally change words in order to seek their particular version of power, because they're vindictive cunts.
You know, I never thought about that portion of the argument, but that's a really good point, dude. Usually I say that the whole power dynamic is part of them trying to justify why they're being oppressed. And if I took a step further, I think I could have got there too, but I'd never really focused on it too much, because usually my argument is debunkable, or my argument usually debunks them well enough. But that's a good one, dude. I like that shit.
And there is an argument against it that actually utilizes power. How do you equalize power across everybody so that it is fair for everyone? You have to make, well, no, kind of, sort of, not really. Because you make the power only power over yourself. Not power over everybody else, power over what you can do. That's the only way it works.
Are you talking about self-responsibility?
Yes, I am.
Well, and even in that particular kind of case, it's not going to equalize jack fucking shit. Because, because what they want is equality of outcome. They don't want equality of opportunity. They don't want an equal playing field. They want an equal scorecard at the end of the game.
Oh, I know that's what they want, but they can never get it. It's the impossible dream.
Well, sure they can. They can get it by forcing it.
Oh, if they force it, all they force is everybody being basically equally poor.
There you go.
You can't force equality in general at all, and to try to force equality will inevitably end up in no equality.
Well, to try and force equality will eventually result in those who didn't earn it learning to not earn it and forming a parasite class in society which feeds off of it. I mean, I've seen it so many times firsthand. And that's what we're ending up with. That's the reason the earth is being drained dry, because it's like all of these sexual liberationists, not considering the consequence of their irresponsible fucking, which is a thing I constantly bring up. They've produced so much spawn that's designed by the irresponsible that they now need to justify their irresponsibility by saying that it was all okay. It's a dramatic post hoc argumentum fallacy, and it sucks ass. And it's also sucking the planet dry of its resources and creating a general earth parasitism, which has created the fat positivity movement, the trans positivity movement, all of these movements that basically say you owe me all of this medical benefit and taking care of me, you know, and I don't have to be responsible for jack fucking shit, because if you say otherwise, you're the oppressor.
Yeah.
Can we get back to one of the things that you mentioned earlier, Idiot's Query, about how universities have to follow the law? Yeah?
Yeah. Well,
The concept of
to a
the
certain
bias
extent,
response team. The concept of the bias response team then doesn't make sense to me. Because conceptually, is everybody here aware of what these are, by the way, before I go any further? Because I only found out about these about 2 weeks ago.
Bias response theory, I probably have an idea. Yeah.
They're basically the human resources department of universities.
Which you would expect.
Yeah, but they're a little bit more than that, though, mate, aren't they? Now,
I was insulting them because I'm still pissed off at Facebook, so I'm not in my normal nice mood, which is normally not very nice to begin with. So
let your rage flow, bro.
Yeah, what's wrong with Facebook today, mate? Apart from everything on Earth.
Oh, okay. Well, they actively suppressed my post about this stream twice. They wouldn't let me post about it and tag a bunch of people. So, like, a lot of the people that might otherwise be watching this stream right now aren't, because fucking Facebook wouldn't let me. The guy who just joined, the guy with the angry Facebook face there, he's one of the people who saw the posts about that. He can tell you a bit about what he saw in the comments where I posted screenshots.
Do share.
Yeah, it's an error message I've gotten before. Now, what exactly does that mean? Because I'm actually not looking at Facebook at the moment, so I'd have to bring up your posts.
It was sorry, this feature isn't available right now. The post and tag friends feature that everybody is supposed to be able to use, and suddenly, because I'm posting something that probably goes directly counter to what Facebook wants out there, it's suddenly not available.
Yeah, I always kind of wonder if I'm getting messed with by the Zuck. I mean, I know a lot of it's supposed to be automated, essentially, allegedly, but
and that's
I know there's still a lot of
Facebook only shows you what it wants to show you.
Facebook's got an algorithm in it that's supposed to reduce certain types of content. It considers to be, quote, hate speech, unquote. I consider their algorithm to be incredibly biased, and it's basically being fed a data set which has probably been created by a number of, shall we say, questionable, to be polite, groups. Like, what was it? What are the ones that it uses? Media Matters and a few others at least.
Yeah, and I've got the super flaggers too, the same with YouTube.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, so let's just go through the line. Fuck Twitter, fuck Facebook, fuck YouTube, and fuck any of these other fucking cuck-ass platforms that want to try and censor speech just because it goes against what their fucking corporate masters they suck the cocks of tell them to.
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up.
For sure.
Because that's the reason this thing was late initially. It was like 12 minutes late because when I was trying to retag people, and I'll try it again. I'm gonna give it one more shot while we're talking here. But effectively, I take time and I try and find specific people. I don't just do it randomly. And I tried to find a specific list of people that would probably be interested in this, and Facebook fucking suppressed me.
So I imagine you've gotten a lot of temp bans and post blocks, and probably, and then probably the same goes for a lot of the people you tag. And there's probably an algorithmic function that would put that 2 and 2 together. It would say, oh, we've already zucked this guy a million times, and everybody he's tagging has as well. So that means we'll block this particular content.
Well, or maybe they just don't like the word I used. I'm gonna eliminate my use of the word anti-feminist as one word, and I'm gonna make it anti-feminist, and I'm gonna see if it works now. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say that, dude, I've gotten banned from Twitter a couple times, shadow banned, and also like straight up banned for destroying pedophiles. It's like, so they don't even really care about what's really fucked up about it. They're just like, oh well, this certain ideology we like, and also, what's really kind of fucked up too is that the pedophile ideology these days, especially with the maps and shit, they also follow the same kind of ideology in a really fucked up, twisted manner of feminists and shit like that too, and the LGBT community. It's kind of fucked. But yeah,
So
I get the whole banning thing. It's kind of fucky. Anyway, Lucanate, what were you saying about the legal thing, the bias response thing?
the bias response team bit. They basically can do everything in a university scenario. If you're a student there, they can make your life a living hell. If you're a teacher there, they can make your life a living hell. And basically, your only option is to either leave or resign in those circumstances and to move on to another school. And in the case of, well, again, in the case of Lindsay Shepherd, for Canada at least, the reason why she's suing is because that particular HR team made her unhireable as a teacher because they spread the word that she wasn't going to play by their rules of complete idiocy, to be fair. I mean, there is no logic to their rules. It's do as I say, not as I do. And if you...
That is the logic. They want power. I mean, if you're being generous and thinking that they have, like, the same sorts of empathy and like, compassion and, you know, depth of character that most people do, and don't just think that they're shallow, pathological, narcissistic power grabbers with psychopathic allies on a doggy leash, then, I mean, fuck these people. Don't say that they're not being logical. They're using logic. They're just not being ethical while doing it.
I'd say to some extent they're being hypocritical consistently. And that means that they're not being consistent. So they can't really, I don't consider them logical because they're inconsistent in everything they say.
Logic and soundness are only a part of ethics. Ethical structures exist that are fundamentally averse to logic. Ethics is a completely different discipline of philosophy.
Yeah, but do they work?
They work for this. They work for the people who are in power. Go ahead, Finian.
Yeah, it's kind of a laughable thing, and people might laugh at it, but this gets back to the whole lawful evil thing. Like, people will use the system to promote and defend their unethical positions, and the government and the legal system under it will defend them. And this is exactly what the topic of tonight is about. That's exactly what they're doing. They're using the system to support and defend an unethical position, and it wouldn't exist without government and the laws under it to support it.
So what's the best way of fighting it? What's the best target? The political sector or the culture war?
Well, right, that's the thing. Culture. We have to get people on board with doing their own shit. We have to. I mean, responsible fucking is a really good basis.
Well, here's the thing too. Well, let me make shit together for you. You have to. Okay, so culture is a product of. Culture is a product, and it also creates your government, right? So the fact that you have one culture, you're going to have a government around that, and that government will also produce more of that culture. Okay, so you have to fight it at the culture and at the political level at the same time, which is it's the same thing, really. And so, like, no matter how it's political, it's cultural, yeah, it's both, and you have to tackle it with both.
Well, cultural inroads are being, met to an extent. I mean, that's why you see kind of the traveling minstrel show almost of, Jordan Peterson, Dave Rubin going on tour, prominent SJW personalities kind of becoming commercially viable. You see that as one way of that being worked out.
I just saw him in Richmond, and I was really shocked at the fact that the night when I saw him talk, he discussed things as individuals being sovereign. And every interaction between humans being voluntary. That dude is a voluntarist, and he just has not come out publicly to declare it.
Damn
So,
straight.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
no, he's not
So-
quite there yet, but he's getting there. He has
No,
a few steps to go.
He ain't an
everything I heard
anarchist.
from him, everything I heard from him in his Richmond show was like, holy shit, this dude is an anarchist, and he's not declaring it publicly. He's keeping it quiet, and I think it's genius, actually. He's using his tour to spread our message, what we believe in, and like literally my lifelong goals. This guy is on a stage and he is talking to people about the exact same shit that I believe in, and people are applauding him and like clapping and standing on their feet, and they don't even realize that that is the exact same message that all of us are supporting. They don't realize it, but it's voluntarism, it's anarchism. That guy believes in it 100%. I guarantee it from watching him and listening to him at that Richmond show. And most people, it's kind of funny, they don't realize that's what he supports, and they're clapping for it. And this dude, he is doing way more for our cause than most people out there. And it's amazing. I applaud him heavily for what he's doing.
I second that entirely. I'll be quite frank. Jordan Peterson has been the biggest boost to voluntarism in years. Honestly, people have actually started taking responsibility because they've just taken his courses or watched some of his videos, because he's put up a lot of his content on YouTube. And it hasn't been taken down because he's very careful about how he presents things so that it's factual. It's educational material, and they can't rip it off because of it.
Oh, okay. So we have one more person in here now. Dean, why don't you introduce yourself and let people know where they can find you? And if you've been listening to the stream at all, you can let us know what you think of what's been discussed already.
Hey, I'm Dino. I'm sorry I haven't been here. I had to run an errand and it took longer than expected. But no, I haven't had a chance to listen. So how about you guys fill me in? What's going on?
Okay, well, fuck Facebook, fuck Twitter, fuck YouTube, fuck feminism, fuck egalitarianism, fuck the state, fuck the system, and fuck collectivism. I think that's relatively...
It sounds like somebody fired up the fuck everything bot on Twitter again.
Yeah, pretty much.
That pretty much sums up this entire stream in a nutshell.
The way of life, man.
Actually, that brings me to another point that feminists will basically try and use as a negative. The concept of the right of discrimination, aka the right of association, which is also the First Amendment right of all Americans and is now completely illegal in Britain. This concept is something that feminism has been fighting against, as have most identitarians of any kind. They deny this idea entirely. They deny the idea that you have the right to discriminate, or they say that
the right to discriminate
is so.
You say of any sort, but identitarian is a party of white nationalists in the UK, so I'm not sure that's entirely fair.
To be fair, the identitarianism.
I've heard some people try to use the term identitarian as a more generic term, but yeah.
And before you go any further, we got one more person who joined the call. Try to not have video on, because I think that's going to interfere with the stream like it did last time. But let us know who you are, where you can be found.
Hey, what's going on, fellas? I'm Conan, son of Conan. I'm all over Twitter and in your face, just helping people to minimize their status footprint and utilize every opportunity we can to divorce ourselves of state monopolies.
All right, and just to get this out here, I am trying one more time to post this 100 tag post to Facebook, and I know it's going to tell me the same thing because they're suppressing me. I broke up the word anti-feminist. It's now anti-feminist. So we'll see if they let me post this or if they're in full suppression mode.
To be fair, mate, I'm expecting full suppression mode, and I'd make that as an argument to just say delete your Facebook.
They suppressed me. No, I'm not going to delete my Facebook. That would let them win.
How does it win?
Because I have no. Hold on. Hold on. You were talking about culture war being a good war, and now you're telling me to eliminate close to 5,000 audience members from my audience. Why?
I didn't realize your following was that large on Facebook. That's all.
It's huge.
I don't have a following on Facebook.
Everywhere.
No, I can see where both of you have a valid point. Like he says, for example, when I was on Facebook, this has been almost 10 years. I had less than 1,000 people, more like 500-600, because it was just my family and relatives, and I avoided Facebook because it was a mess. Every time I went on there, I had some ex-girlfriend or baby mama or something talking. But either way, that's in that situation. Yeah, the best thing you can do is get as many people off of that platform as you can. But when you're a person that has 5K plus followers on Facebook, and it is also a platform that can reach a lot of people. Let's just say we want people to get off and log off of Facebook, but we want to hand them pamphlets on their way out the door. So I see in my situation, it was best to just disconnect it completely. But in your case, I mean, if you're using it to spread the message, I don't see any issue there at all. It's not like you're helping Facebook. If anything, you're harming their brand from within.
Yeah, fair point. I mean, it is a separate strategy from what I would deploy, simply because I don't have a following there. If they did the same, if Google did something to my main channel, like they've done to a lot of other people with basically 5 times as many followers as I've got on there, yeah, I'd probably be getting quite incensed. But for me, I'd still migrate to another and start getting people to come over with you if you can.
Well, and I wouldn't mind doing that. I'm trying to sort of do a lot of my activity on Steemit at this point, which I'll be cross-posting every episode that I haven't already at some point today. But effectively, right now there isn't a platform that I don't have at least 1,000 possible viewers on, and so go for that.
There's kind of an important thing that I think does need to be considered when talking about this, and that is that there is a middle ground, and it's a necessary middle ground.
Are we talking about feminism or Facebook?
No, the Facebook thing.
Okay.
And I believe the middle ground is this. I think the solution is if you're going to be a person who makes things, if you're going to be a person who creates content, you do that on your own as much as you can. And by that, I mean, as much as is possible or feasible, do your own infrastructure. If you can, have your own server, If you can make all of this happen for yourself, you want to do it that way. However, I do think it is. I think it's important to be where the people are. If you're trying to spread a message, you don't want to artificially limit your reach. And outside of that, these kinds of companies like Facebook and stuff like that, they can't live forever. Facebook specifically, because the business model is inherently broken. And you cannot. Adam Curry likes to say this. The guy who invented podcasting likes to say that you cannot monetize the network, and he's right. The only way to effectively and efficiently and in a guaranteed sense make money is to have people pay for a product, and that's it. So I think there's an important middle ground. I don't think you want to leave. I don't think you want to leave where the people are, especially if you have a message to send.
Well, also, here's the thing that before the internet, what else do we have? we had a whole bunch of ways to get our messages to cross people, right? Of course, with the internet, it makes it a hell of a lot easier to reach thousands of people, but also thousands of people are able to see a whole bunch of things, right? And so, like, the internet isn't necessarily vital to reach people, but it's a really good tool to do so. So I see where you're coming from, Dean, for sure.
From my perspective, I don't see as much benefit to use platforms which are going to downgrade your ability to be shared, as has been demonstrated today on Jeremiah's own streams. And
well, but here's the thing, though. I mean, I made several posts that Facebook was suppressing me, and people liked that and told me to get in contact with them in other ways, and I'm trying to do that now. I said, okay, join my Discord if you want updates when I post. Facebook is completely blocking my tagged posts now, link in comments, and I put my link there. And I guarantee you that before I'm done with this sentence, somebody is going to like that post because they will have seen it, and because Facebook's algorithms feeds people's posts that have something to do with a subject that they're interested in. So if Facebook decides that they want to suppress everything, maybe then it would be a good idea to not be on there anymore. But realistically, it wouldn't be a good idea to delete the account at that point because they still have the information anyway. Like what, delete it in protest?
Yes,
yes. That's the kind of thing. Delete and protest. And then people
don't delete your shit.
Don't
leave
delete
the information
it.
out there.
Leave it out there.
Leave the information out there, all of it.
This is just like democracy. It doesn't work. Like we can all leave Facebook, and it won't make a fucking difference because the majority of people will still be on it. So yeah, we need to stay there, like a virus in the system, basically. If you have the time and energy to do it.
If you do have a moral problem with being on Facebook, leave Facebook. It's fine. Like I'm not going to shit in anybody's mouth for leaving Facebook. I left Facebook a long time ago. I didn't leave it for any political reason. I left it because it was fucking with my life. But yeah, if you want to leave. If you want to stay. It's absolutely a personal decision. I don't really I don't care who's on Facebook and who's not. I just think there's a tactical advantage to being on Facebook.
I think that advantage has limits. That's my view.
Yeah, I don't think tactics has limits, bro.
From a implementation perspective, Jeremiah, recommendation: don't use the word anti-feminism or anti-space feminism. Say feminism discussion. Because if you put in anti-feminism, you've already declared your bias. And because you've declared your bias, the algorithms will pick up on that bias and they are semantic algorithms. You have to phrase it.
In terms of like in support of science, I will give this a shot. I will give it a shot to use that particular phrase.
It will also pick it up in the name of the video if it's there. It is a very clever semantic algorithm that you are fighting here.
Well, I'll eliminate it from my text description. That's all I'll do for now, because I'm not going to rename the video that I'm in right now. That would just fuck with other people.
Right.
Fair enough. No,
there's also the definite. There's also the possibility that you can use. I don't like doing this because it's obfuscation. And I value honesty quite a bit, but you can use things like coded language that get your point across without triggering those things. So one of my favorite phrases is, I can't remember where I saw this, but I started using it, and that's neo-feminism. A phrase like neo-feminism that anyone who has seen that before knows that means you're not a huge fan of it. But I don't know that that's the kind of thing that's going to get tagged.
We're behind enemy lines, though. Use any means necessary to further our cause.
Replace the vowels with emojis.
Okay, well, on that score, then, if every one of you shared this video from the link and let people know that you're in this stream, let's see if that boosts the numbers on its own. Because I mean, I'm really interested in how actively I'm being suppressed. I'm wondering if Facebook knows what I do and is like actively against me specifically, or if Twitter is, or if anything is, because that would be really fucking interesting since I'm not that big yet.
Sorry, Jeremiah, can I be a horrible coward and back out on this? Because that kind of shit can get me arrested.
Oh yeah, no, you're fine. You're in the USSK.
Yeah, May's made Britain Soviet again.
Don't do shit that's gonna get you in trouble. You're more valuable outside of bars than behind them.
I have to stop everything and just state for the fact that it's pretty sad, actually, that we are at that stage in our human history again where people can be arrested for what they fucking share on the internet. Just saying.
It's a fucking tragedy, man. Honestly. And it's in Britain, the place where John Cleese is best known for that one bit in Fawlty Towers where he's got a concussion and is basically insulting Germans by being a Nazi. And he does that so beautifully. And yet now you get a pug to do a salute every time you say something Nazi related, and that's anti-Semitic.
But here's the thing.
How did we get here? How the fuck did we get there?
I'm telling you how we got there, and it goes exactly back to what I said. It's these unethical people using their feelings as power. Like the feminine over the masculine has a few traits that the masculine doesn't, and one of them has always chiefly been the expression and cultivation of emotion. And if you can codify that and make it seem as though offending somebody is just as serious as having assaulted them, you can get any sort of political will you want thrown down in there.
But this is the problem. I don't understand how people have gotten to the point. I mean, I was bullied as a kid, quite a lot. And it got to the point where when Columbine happened, there were people actively being really friendly to me because they, quote, didn't want to be on my kill list, which I never had.
Same here, dude.
And
don't worry.
I was like, what the fuck? Dude, what do you think of me? It just baffled me. Like, okay, fine, I guess. I didn't realize I gave off that kind of aura.
No, dude, you should have milked that shit till no tomorrow. I would have bought the biggest fucking trench coat, some fucking shade. I'd have got myself a fashy fucking haircut, some crazy.
Oh no, man, I can't pull off skinhead.
Nobody would have. You don't have to be a skinhead. You just have to look like you're ready to go off the fucking Richter, and you can fit an AR in your coat. That's all you need, man.
Yeah, over. Fucking Conan has seen my high school picture, and it's not very nice looking.
But this is my point. I mean, I was basically a skeleton, effectively, in high school for the most part, and yeah, I still wouldn't take shit. But that's the point. They'd give it, and I'd give it right back, and I learned that. I learned that's what you need to do. You need to be able to keep up with the banter. And I don't quite understand what the hell has happened to turn all of these people into cry-bullies.
Really, though? I mean, because we're talking about this generation, like I said, which has grown up codifying power. It's really easy to know how we got here. How isn't the problem? The mechanisms are very obvious, but mass assembly.
I know the state, but which bit? Which bit? I mean, you can say the state did it, but which?
Hold on. If we're talking schools specifically, big ass assemblies that go against bullying, big ass assemblies that codify which types of bullying are essentially okay and which parts aren't, by telling you like what you can do in terms of power to get your way rather than bullying. They have divested all of the power to being bullies to the state and have made it essentially acceptable to not take responsibility for your own bullying, but still bully by proxy. That's how we fucking got here.
Not to mention, if you guys want to take just a moment to look back about 25 years ago, and if you look at least for American film, There's a storyline that you always see. You always see the kid getting bullied by some big dumbass kid with a shitty haircut, and then it's the quiet kid or the new kid who steps up and says, "Leave him alone." Like that was what we saw as a kid. We would watch these shows and we would say, well, that bully is just a jerk picking on somebody weaker than him. And this kid, the hero, we like this guy because you naturally gravitate towards people who will stand up on their own and you know, go against that. So that's a real point. We've delegated that. We don't tell kids, hey man, you don't let people pick on that kid. You have no idea what he went through. His mom died when he was 4 years old. Like we don't do that anymore. Now, instead of telling kids to stick up for yourself and for each other, we tell kids, oh, well, you just need to count on the state to create this safe environment for you to live in where people aren't allowed to say or do these certain things. Yes, exactly. And that's not the solution. There's not a safe space world. This is a crazy, dangerous world where people, the strong eat the weak. That's the world that we live in. That's nature. And that's also civilization. The best thing you can teach children, and this is what I teach mine, this is what my father taught me, is to, one, have constitution, fortitude, be able to hold yourself up. Don't let words bother you. And number two, you don't tolerate weakness. It's one of those things that I just always seen. I hate seeing someone prey on somebody weaker than them. It pisses me off. I'll pull over in traffic and catch a charge, even now as a grown man, because that's just programmed in my brain by my family, by the values that I had growing up.
I agree with you.
And we've strayed away from that. And that's where your problem is.
You're right. It started in the 70s. The 1970s brought with it the self-esteem movement. And the self-esteem movement led to an interesting phenomenon where people began to value the idea of external validation over internal validation. Self-esteem is based on the notion that you should that the health of a person's psychology is directly related to how much they value themselves, and so you should make them value themselves more.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Here,
That's weird.
You just contradicted yourself a little bit there, bud. You said it depends purely upon their own rights, but you need to make sure that, or purely upon their own self-image, but you need to make sure that they have their self-image, right?
I think
so. It's a combination of both.
The idea, I'm sorry if it wasn't clear. The idea behind the self-esteem movement was that everybody should bend over backwards to make sure that people feel good about themselves. It's about external validation. And what you do is you've trained children, and this happened in particularly in my parents' generation and in my generation, was that you train children to seek their validation from an external source. You ensure that they feel good about themselves, and you teach them that if somebody makes you feel bad about yourself, that person is bad, wrong, to be ignored. You're not taught to accept your flaws. You're not taught to better yourself. You are taught to seek validation from external sources. This is the damage that the self-esteem movement has done.
I see what you're saying now. Gotcha. Because you do need both. You do need others to say, yeah, this is. You know, you have to have social acceptance in order for anything to happen, right?
Sure, but it feels good to be told. It absolutely feels good to be told that you're good and smart, right? But
the problem is, but also you do need to make sure that you know that. So, like, okay, I have some self-esteem issues, but my self-esteem issues are not from my ability to be intelligent or use logic and shit like that. It comes from a different kind of thing, and it comes from like ostracization, right? Like I don't have any like real life friends. It feels like I don't know if you guys consider you guys my friends or not. Like I don't know if you guys would actually be friends with me in real life. But at the same time,
yeah, I consider you a friend, Ben.
Well, thank you.
I consider anybody.
Yeah, same here. If I'm honest, to be quite frank, most of the people I know online, I've never met, but I do try to help them when I can.
I just don't have much physical contact with people. Like I have my dog and my sister. But that's about it. And so, and like, so the thing is like, you do need, external, effort to help you have self-esteem for sure. Like there's a whole lot of things that go into it. So to say that
that's more about building support systems for yourself though. That's more about, like you
right. I don't want you guys to confuse
and making friends with like me and Jeremiah and Lupin and all that. That's building that system that's going to create that, like being surrounded by people who are going to support. That's what that is. The problem that the self-esteem movement did. Yeah, well, that's the thing. The problem that the self-esteem movement did was that it caused people to look. It's Barney. It's
yeah.
And I say
that
it's
makes sense.
Barney as it's a representation of this thing of like some outside source constantly pointing at you and saying you are special, you are important, you are good.
And let's be really specific. I mean, let's use Barney as an example here, because fuck Barney too. It's a giant plush purple dinosaur with human teeth that are soft. So it takes something scary and it takes away its teeth, it softens it up, it swaps the color palette, it removes the claws, it takes away all of the danger, and then at the same time tells people that they're special without them actually earning it.
It's a deep,
and it's not even a matter of earning it. It's right, and the thing is that kind of validation, that's not really self-knowledge. That's not really even self-love. That is an illusion. That the only real sense of self-knowledge and self-love that you can develop is through internal query. It's through looking into yourself and saying, okay, what are my flaws? How can I help myself be better? What's good about me? What do I do that's excellent? That's how you develop a sense of self that is accurate and proper. And part of the reason I think that we have all these people who want to have, as you guys were saying earlier, the state step in and make things safe for them and make them feel good, and the anti-bullying and all this other stuff. Look, bullies are assholes. I was bullied viciously. However,
well, yeah, but you know, sometimes the bullied can be assholes too. Let's remember that.
That's true. That's not entirely false. And here's the thing, though, too. You have to consider this as well. There is an amount of disinformation about bullying that exists, specifically because of, and I'm glad Lupin brought it up, specifically because of Columbine. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold were not bullied. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold
were bullied? I thought they were bullied.
They were not. Eric Harris was incredibly popular, and Dylan Klebold was kind of spineless and just a tag along to Eric Harris. If you watch those videos, you'll see that Dylan Klebold and a lot of psychiatrists have gone back and psychologists rather have gone back and watched those videos and looked for clues. And one of the things that you'll see a lot is that anytime Dylan Klebold says anything particularly violent, or like really, it looks like he's the ringleader, right? But every time he does it, he looks at Eric. He's looking for validation from Eric. And Eric Harris, this dude got dates. This dude was not bullied like I was bullied, or like anyone that I know who was bullied was bullied, if he was bullied at all. That's pure disinformation. This dude was popular, and he was a sociopath, and that's why he did what he did.
With the risk of sounding nihilistic, I don't believe we should focus on the individual level of this kind of stuff. So my main objective in life is to further individual liberty. So like, if somebody's bullying me or not, or what somebody's, and everybody has them, everybody has their own individual struggles. Those are not what's most important. I mean, I know to the individual, those are.
It's absolutely true. Absolutely
yeah, but
personal isn't the same as important.
Yeah, my objective in life is to further something way larger than the individual. And me, I mean, myself, I am like a tiny piece of the puzzle. I don't matter, basically, when you consider the overall objective, and that objective is maximizing individual liberty. If I am furthering that objective, and the people around me are, by the way, that defines them as a friend. We were talking about that earlier. If you're furthering individuals' liberty's cause, you're my friend. Like, you might not even meet me yet, and you are automatically my friend, because those are the kind of things that are important in life. My individual feelings and stuff, they don't matter. I mean, to me, they matter, obviously, but to the overall scheme of things and the important things in life, they don't matter.
I absolutely think that's right, and I think it's also important and interesting to look at, just to look at the way that people interact typically. One of the things that we don't really know, or that not a lot of people really know, is that human beings can handle about 150 to 300 social connections. We are wired physically to be able to handle about 150 to 300 social connections. That's about as big as our circle can get. And this has been shown in various ways, for numbers all the way up to like 300. But typically, you're going to find studies that fall somewhere between 150 and 300.
That's why you can't remember all your old high school classmates.
That's exactly right. And it's why as much as you are empathetic toward things that happen to people that you don't know, as much as you are empathetic toward that, you also don't care.
Well, I mean, and that's of course at this point. I'm assuming that back in tribal days, you couldn't remember nearly as many as 100. You know, you probably couldn't remember 50, and you would probably have to focus really hard to even remember that. That might have been why there were so many very specific tribal structures, and why you had to get to know one person to get to know 10 more. So realistically, there might come a point when our brains can handle more connections, but we're certainly not there yet.
Yeah, it's an evolutionary thing, but that's the thing too, is that evolutionarily people theorize, and of course we don't. This is one of those things that a lot of people have tried to prove in a lot of different ways, but the primary theory that is behind if this 150 to 300 numbers is right, then why? And the primary theory behind it is that was the size of an evolving tribe. Human beings didn't evolve one by one in a vacuum. They evolved in tribes. And the size of a tribe could have been between 150 to 300 people. That's all you needed. And so that's the ability to remember more people wasn't necessarily selected for. And the ability to remember fewer people was a disadvantage. So if that's the size of an evolutionary tribe, then there you go. There's your 150 to 300 people number.
I will gladly abandon my tribe, though, if their ultimate objective in life is not individual liberty. All of us think back to your. I don't think that's a factor, though, of humans. I think that's a factor. I think that's the. Yeah, but think back to high school.
Internet.
Think back to high school. How many people in high school could you actually consider your legitimate friend based off of your most important beliefs in life? I literally have one person that I can think of that believes and wants to further the same things in my life. That's it. From the entire high school class that I graduated in, that one person being Natasha Wilson or Wago, whatever you want to call her. That's it. One person out of all those people. So I would definitely not call that my tribe. Most people that I graduated with, shit, they don't give a fuck about individual liberty.
All right. It's not to say that you can't move. It is to say that that's like a hard limit on how many people you are physically capable of actually caring about.
Want to know something funny about the individual liberty argument? And this kind of goes back to what Jordan Peterson says a couple times too, but he's actually completely right. Everyone, they talk about the minorities, right? And the biggest minority is the individual. And so they want all this freedom and all this shit to happen, but they want it for groups, not the individual. And they won't get there. And they're not going to get there for quite a long time because they're always focusing on a certain group that they have, not necessarily themselves as one person.
That's exactly right. This is one of the reasons we've seen like SJW specifically start to eat each other.
That's why intersectionality is developed, because it's a way to kind of individualize that group think.
That's exactly right. And the social justice warriors, they've started now. If you have you been looking at Eric July over the last like couple of days?
Oh yeah, he's been calling people out left and right.
Yeah, he's been going hard, but there was a lady on there who he posted a thing saying that like kind of like you guys were saying when I first joined, that discrimination's a right. Like it might make you an asshole, but it's still your right. You know what I mean?
We're all
And
assholes.
Yeah, free association.
exactly.
We're
So
all
he's
assholes
been-
to somebody.
Yeah, exactly. That's what he's been saying. And there was a lady on there who was arguing with him, and she quoted one of his things as if she was making a point, where he had been talking about discrimination against the LGBT community, and he said, "This is a right. You have the right to discriminate. It might make you a jerk, but you have that right." And he didn't word it that way, but she like basically copy pasted his tweet and replaced LGBT with black, as if Eric July would give a shit. and he responded like, yeah, exactly, that too. Like, I don't understand. Like, this is the thing that you begin to see them eat each other when they forget about the individual. Because one of the things that she told Eric July, this is the point that I was getting to, I got sidetracked, was that black straight men are the white men of black people.
Oh, I've heard that before, yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, think about it. So.
Well, it makes
Can I
sense if you're
interject?
it makes sense if you're an intersectional splinterist. But go ahead.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
You
just
can
want to say
understand how they rank things, but yeah.
And but you see them
Well,
start to eat each other.
let Conan say something here. He's been trying to get in.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
appreciate it. No, it's good, brother. You were making a solid point. It seems like a real good time to just take a moment to pause since we've gotten to this point where we're talking about these sort of intersectional feminism and the way it goes and how they just keep dividing themselves more and more into they intentionally corral themselves into these sort of, sectarian groups, if you will. This is a really
That's
important.
perfect phrasing for that.
Yeah, and
Yes,
this is
absolutely.
This is a very important time for all of us who have libertarian / voluntarist / anarchist, agorist ideas to learn a very important lesson from the feminist movement. And that lesson is what happens, and I'm talking to the big L's and the minarchists. This is what happens when you compromise the principles of your movement. It starts really, really, really small, little things, right? And then it corrodes and it corrodes and it corrodes. Now remember, original feminism was nothing more than, hey, I have every right that you have. There's not a single logical reasoning libertarian who would not be in favor of feminism, because feminism was the simple idea that I have the right to do what I want. I don't have some automatic duty or obligation to society just because I was born with a uterus and a vagina. My obligation is to myself and whatever responsibilities I take on, whether that the whole burning the bras and doing what you want. It doesn't matter if we agree with what your personal decisions, the point where those are decisions for you to make and you have that right. There was nothing wrong with that, but we see what happens. Just like our idea, the concept that rights belong to the individual, not to the group. The idea that each individual is the arbiter of their own destiny. That's a beautiful, beautiful ideology. The moment you start to compromise that is the moment that you see what has happened to feminism. The difference is it happened to them over a very slow, gradated period of time. It's not going to happen like that with us in the age and the era where
no
we are.
fewer
Very
than
easy
4
to
different
spin off into
waves.
right wing. So you need to. So when people start throwing the purist card around, I like it. Call me a purist. I don't give a shit. I'm all about McNukes and online hookers. Call me a purist. I don't care. My point is, and I embrace that, because a purist, as long as I'm a purist and as long as I'm not dead or end up with, illegal porn planted on my computer or some shit, you guys know what I'm talking about, then I know that the movement's not going to be completely dead, because there's so many other people out here who are willing to compromise that. I'm not going to say their names and give them publicity, but it's been a constant thing. And the worst part is someone wants to come at me or an anarchy bar or an anarchy bar. I'm gonna sell that shit. Or Jeremiah.
Yes.
Now it's
bar.
Coke. That's right.
Lemon
Now it's
chocolate
cocaine. That's right. So my point is that then people will get at us and say, look, now's not the time to be divisive. We need to work together. No, fuck you, Nazi. No, we don't. We don't need to work together because all you're going to do is bleed us out, water down our message, and turn us into some Hoppian bullshit. And that's what's going to happen. The same thing that happens to feminism will happen to us if we allow it. I'm done.
For me, I'm an anarcho-coalitionist. What I support, and like I like everything you just said, but what I support is like fighting alongside people who are truly willing to minimize the state, and that means like effectively not starting a new one once you win. So if they're true anarchists, I'll fight alongside them, even if I'm not a communist, even if I'm not a mutualist, even if I'm not, you know, a transhumanist, even if I think technology sucks, but I'm not a, you know, a fucking primitivist or a green anarchist. You know, I'm still going to work with them because fundamentally I'm not going to assume that everybody's going to agree with my desired outcome. But at the same time, if I see that they're creeping up and they're going to try and destroy me from the inside out, they're going to regret having lived in the first place. I'll make it that simple.
So has any of y'all had a good interaction with the anarcho-feminist?
No, what? How is that a thing?
The what? Huh? Wait, hang on. That's like an anarcho-socialist.
No. Hold on. Anarcho-feminism makes complete sense, especially the school which doesn't accept patriarchy theory. There's plenty that can be said. Especially, there's plenty that can be said for smashing the archonic structures and thinking that there's lots to do with men in those archonic structures. The idea is that in order to get total equality of women, you're going to have to smash the state. So you're going to have to smash what they've been supporting, and you're going to have to like smash the corporations, smash all of this, and then you get equality as a possibility.
So why the fuck call yourself an anarcho-feminist? That makes no goddamn sense, honestly.
Well,
we're fighting for the same thing. On it, like we're both fighting for the same thing. We want everyone to be, you know, whatever the fuck, do your own individual liberty.
Because
why call yourself an anarcho-feminist?
Because they come to it from a different
It's about your motivation. It's about what's motivating you to be an anarchist.
Think about it, dude. You're into crypto and I'm into big guns, right? We're both anarchists, but we both have several different directions. It's an oversimplification, but you know, just because a spear only has one point doesn't mean an army can only have one spear.
Well, no. I'm not. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just. So it's just a motivation, right? Like they just want.
It's a motivation for
they don't want to
and it's actually
it's a different angle. That's all. That's a different angle of attack. That's it.
Okay,
don't
that makes sense, but it still confuses me a little bit. But
what's cool about that is it's kind of a callback to it is kind of a callback to actually original primary feminism. If you read Simone de Beauvoir's The Second Sex and you look at it in the context of ethics, and especially The Ethics of Ambiguity, which is another one of her works. Simone de Beauvoir is amazing and a genius, and I love her. She was a communist, but that's part and parcel to being counterculture in France in the early 20th century. She wrote The Second Sex. It is full of cardinal sins to modern feminism. One of the primary ones being that Simone de Beauvoir recognizes and accepts that there are differences between men and women. And the reason that's a cardinal, I talked about this, I talked about this on Fadcast. The reason that's a cardinal sin for modern neo-feminists is because if there are differences between two things, that means that there are probably differences between the aptitudes for those two things, right? So it's just simply by right of there being a difference between two things, there's going to be aptitude differences. And Simone de Beauvoir did not fight that idea. She said, yeah, absolutely, men and women are different. Duh. Like, well, hold on. Like, that's not a reason for me to not be able to vote. Like, that was the idea.
Okay. Here's my issue with the idea of man, I got to think on the whole anarcho-feminist thing. Like, I get the motivation behind it for sure. Different tactic. But as we discussed before, isn't there already a word that they could be using instead of feminism for that?
But yeah, egalitarianism.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
so that kind of confuses me. Like, I don't know why they're trying to use that. It doesn't sound
well,
like
let me give you an example. Let me give you an example of where it would apply. Okay, my ex-wife's family, they're Muskogee or Creek, right? And their society is a matriarchal society. This doesn't mean that, you know, women boss men around or anything like that. It's not like your Jewish mother lording over you and guilting you into doing whatever she says. But they do have, yeah, I've dated a couple of Jewish girls too. Anyway, but yeah, hey man, I thought Catholic moms had it going on, but no, bro, no. Like I see where they learned it from. They learned from Senpai. But I digress. Don't let me get on a tangent about mother-in-law. So the point being is that so this is a matriarchal society. This doesn't necessarily mean that women are the boss, but it means that, for example, they track their family matrilineally, right? Because you don't have to worry about, you know, if the baby comes out looking the wrong way, you don't have to wonder who the mom is. So it makes very logical sense that they do this matrilineally. Also, and this has somewhat changed with you know, in the last couple of 100 years, but a son would not immediately, of course he knows his dad and he lives with his dad and his dad teaches him stuff, but his father is not the immediate, most primary male influence to him. Because oftentimes his father may not even be of the tribe. It's his mother's brothers and his maternal grandfather and his maternal grandmothers. These are the people on the mother's side of the family that he looks to the closest. Now, if you think about it in that context, this is a voluntary, the Muskogees, they're a voluntary society. All of the laws that they have aren't laws. They're simply customs that are honored by tradition. There's no official that's going to come cut your head off or lock you up if you break if you break a taboo. So with this in mind, you can understand that in a world where you're surrounded, where it's a man's world, and you grow up in a tiny little society where women basically anytime you're not at war, women are pretty much running all the civil stuff. You know what I'm saying? Unless
that was Sparta, bro.
Conflict.
That was
okay. Well, yeah, dude. I know who Sparta is. That's not exactly how it went there, but yes, there's something there. Okay. My point is that this is a matriarchal. That was a very militant, authoritative society. The Creeks were not. They were a voluntarious, decentralized society. They were a matriarchal society in times of peace. And the only time men had power were during times of conflict, and those were temporary. So a person from that perspective is definitely going to have a stronger leaning towards feminism and anarchy. You have a stronger leaning towards anarchy because, all these Europeans came and took all your shit. It's no good.
Well, hold on.
And you're going to have a leaning towards feminism because you're in a male-dominated world when you grew up in a female-dominated society.
I think me and Lupin have the same issue with this.
No, I wasn't going to actually raise an issue. I was going to expand a bit, to be honest, because I'm not entirely certain that most of America isn't actually, culturally at least, matriarchal. Because there is a hell of a lot of it, if I'm honest. And not just, you made the joke earlier about the Jewish and the Catholic, but it's not just them. There's a lot of sort of cultural things within the South, in particular.
Yeah. Down here in Texas, we love our mamas.
It is a very matriarchal thing. And my grandmother, for example, was to a large extent ran the budget of the house. My grandfather made the money; she controlled how it was spent.
That is traditional American society.
Basically. Yeah, the women decided what they would buy for the household, and the men would go out and make the money. And that's basically how the old-fashioned nuclear family worked. And it did cause a lot of conflict because there were often cases where two matriarchs would butt heads. And then they would constantly get involved in their children's lives. And the mother-in-law effect came in. And that's why it was always such a joke in like WB cartoons and stuff to teach kids that you shouldn't trust the mother-in-law because she's basically trying to continue controlling the relationship that you're having with your wife by making them do things that benefit the mother-in-law and not the relationship itself.
Yeah, but the Creeks figured that out. They learned that when you run a matrilineal, because that's true, but it's still within the frame of a patriarchal society. You don't have to worry about mother-in-laws when the husband takes the wife's name. You see what I'm saying? That removes the mother-in-law power dynamic because the mom and the grandmother, she's not contending with a mother-in-law. It's her and her own mother, the grandmother. And that's one of those benefits that you have within that structure. Oh, but no, but you're right. There is a very it's kind of ironic that if you think about it from that perspective, the old school nuclear family, a woman had a very large amount of power, responsibility, and decision making in what went on in the house, how the home was run, in tending to the children and the state and affairs of the house. Really, if you think about it from that perspective, the guy he's just the guy that goes and brings the stuff. And she said it's not a bad, it's good to be queen, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, without the two, one cannot have the family itself. That was the problem. And then a whole new dynamic exploded after the 70s with the single mother or the single father family, basically, the single parent family.
Well, in the U.S., it was the no-fault divorce law in the 1980s. Most states adopted the no-fault divorce law in the 1980s, and that allowed parents to split up very easily.
I don't know, man. I'm not going to blame laws for things I'm not going to do that. But I will say that what led up to that no-fault divorce in the early 80s, what led up, the same thing that caused that is what caused the skyrockets in divorce, and that was an erosion of morality at the home. People stopped, and it didn't. I'm not, you know me, I don't espouse religion or anything. That was where our moral code happened to come from, was from this idea of this Christian ideal of a nuclear family. Man, a woman, kids, dog, picket fence, that whole nine. That was considered sacred. That was something to aspire for, and it was something that you would be shamed for getting a divorce if it was anything short of like dangerous and violent, you know. And when you discard those things, this is what happens.
And it makes some sense to shame people for divorce because first off, let's do 5 things. First off, let me make something very clear. My mother divorced my father. He was abusive. He's not anymore. Yeah. It was a good thing in my life, and I'm not saying divorce is always bad. However,
no. I would never purport to say, I want to be clear about this too. I would never purport to say, number one, I would never purport to say that being a single parent is necessarily bad.
Sorry, right. A lot of that cut out on me, so.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say I would not purport to say that being a single parent is bad, first off.
I need to do more data analysis, but I'm not certain it isn't. I'm not going to say it is because I came from a single parent family to a large extent, but
I'm not saying it's optimal.
Well, but
it's not optimal.
But let me just
in some cases it can.
But let me just finish this. Let me just finish this list. So it is. So the first object was to just establish that I'm not always opposed to divorce. The second object is the point of marriage originally was to send people to their parents, to the parents of the other person, and to get approval for the bonding and for the continuing of the family line. And essentially, you want to talk patriarchy, it was where the daughter was sold off to the man. Now, I don't support that. It's one of the places I agree with feminists on, is that I don't support that. I think that's fucking bullshit. And it also means that I don't generally support the concept of marriage, because I think what it does is it creates a huge amount of inaccountability because they're already married. It's like basically relationship tenure. So I would oppose the idea of marriage to begin with. But the third thing, the fourth thing I would say is that if you break a promise to maintain a healthy relationship with people, then maybe there should be some sort of social consequence if there wasn't a very dire reason for it. And that the fact that there isn't means that there can be a huge amount of people neglected, poorly parented, irresponsibly fucked into being and irresponsibly treated once they're there. I mean, realistically, it creates a wormhole of fuck that needs to stop if the earth is going to be preserved at all. And so I would say that, it makes sense, even though I disagree, and I would say that in a lot of cases, divorce is totally, 100% great.
I don't think the government should be involved at all in relationships. So the whole idea of marriage is maddening to me. So we shouldn't even be getting married in a legal sense.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
My mother was married to 4 different guys. 4 different guys. And it was on the 4th guy that, as an IT specialist, I was remoted into their computer, and I was using it to fix their computer, and I was helping them basically. And I was watching my mother and my oldest sister talk back and forth on instant messenger about how they were using my mother's 4th husband for my mom to take advantage of him and use him to get ahead in life. That moment in my life woke me up to what the fuck was going on, basically. And my mom had been using all of these individual men as tools to further her life and to benefit herself and to further her goals. She didn't give a fuck about any guy that literally she'd ever been married to, all the way back to my father. And she brutalized and bullshitted and lied about my own dad from the very beginning. And the whole system, that's how fucked up it is. Like my mom was able to get away with that and ruin all these men's lives, and she got away with it because the legal system is that messed up right now. And
well, here's also the thing.
Well, sorry, go on, Idiot Square.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Finian, if you were still continuing. My bad.
It boils down to a control issue. Like, marriage should not have anything to do with control. I mean, this gets back to the very basics of voluntarism. I'm in a relationship with a woman right now, and we have children together. Our objective mutually is not to control each other. We are equals, and we are in this relationship for the betterment of each other and our children. That's the kind of stuff that we should be focusing on. All the legal systems that are in place right now, and a lot of these SJWs and people and the feminists, they're not in it for that. They're in it for their own personal empowerment and their control over other people. And that's the kind of stuff that we need to stop.
Can I also blame that on the self-esteem movement real quick? Because one of the things that came out of the self-esteem movement was the notion of a right to happiness. And
so that's where that bastard came from.
Yeah, that's one of the things that grew out of the self-esteem movement. And so people will one of the reasons that the idea of partnership in a relationship is broken is because people believe that instead of having to work for and create happiness, they have a right to it intrinsically. This is why I frankly think this is why suicide, exactly. I think this is why suicide and depression is rising, is because people think they have a right to happiness, and they see
no.
Social media is not helping, but I don't want to blame it on social media entirely. But social media, people present their best life and they look happy, and nobody's really that happy.
Well, hold on. My issue with it is that with that kind of logic, with what Finian's mom does, and I don't mean to talk shit on your mom, Finian. That kind of logic and what you're also talking about, Dane, is it boils down to people thinking that people don't mean fuck all. And that's kind of fucky, because like we're all social beings and people do mean everything to someone else. And so like my whole thing is like, oh, well, this has happened, fuck it, people don't matter. It's like, the fuck they don't. Like, that's pretty much what life is in general. People have to matter. You can't not have life without people. And so that's my issue, because like I'm tossed out of a lot of shit because I'm very I'm not a good person, I guess. I don't know what the fuck it is, but yeah.
I just want to point out to Dinophile, I love the fact that you hate boomers about as much as I do. This is twice you've made a reference to the self-esteem movement, man. And you're right, they do ruin everything. I just wanted to put that out there. God, by all means, go ahead with your combo. But yes, boomers, they ruin everything. I blame them for all of it.
Yeah, and like, so my thing is that because it kind of boils down to both of that. It's like, oh, people don't matter. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do me. Like, yeah, I do you, but at the same time, you're fucking up people, man. Like, I don't understand it. Like, when you're doing you in a nefarious way because you're using somebody else to get somewhere, that's sociopathic in its own right. And saying that people don't fucking matter is fucked up. And that's part of the feminist movement too. And I have an issue with that. It's like, oh, men don't fucking matter. Like, bitch, no, they do matter, because guess what? You can't fucking breed without men, dumb. And so like, it drives me insane, because like the whole idea is that people don't matter in general, and I'm like, no, people do fucking matter, and I like people. I hate them, but I like them at the same time.
That's the
It drives us crazy.
What you're referencing is the Kantian kingdom of ends. When Kant was writing about ethics, effectively, he was writing, when he was developing the categorical imperative and all this other stuff, the idea was that you could universalize ethics, and that you could have a universal ethical expectation. And one of his notions was that in order to behave ethically, one must exist in a kingdom of ends, meaning that you must treat every other person as an end in themselves. You are not allowed to treat another person as a means, ever. And that
treating people as things is is basically the root of all sin, as you would understand it religiously or conceptually. That's the Kantian ethic. And my argument is, for all SJWs, is if they read Kant, they misunderstood it, or they've never fucking read Kant.
Right. And here's the thing, you don't have to agree with Kant. I personally, I don't agree with Kant on everything. I'm more of an existentialist about things, but then a Kantian. But Kant's ethic, the kingdom of ends specifically, is something that I love as a concept, because he's not wrong. If you treat every other human being as an end in themselves, and if everyone does that, you have an immediate ethical society. It's automatic.
Yes, I didn't know that was the thing, because I didn't read his point on Kant. I've read a lot of Kant, but I haven't read that. So
this is the thing with Kant. He didn't believe that everything was subjective. He thought that there is an objective reality. And he focused on that. And he basically said, all right, if there's an objective reality, then there must be an objective ethics. Because if everything in reality is objective, then ethics must also be objective.
I have an issue with that, because
the thing is that he is both right. It is a bit like Schrodinger's cat. He is both right and wrong, because everything is subjective to every human being. However, if everybody unanimously agrees that X is true, X is true. It doesn't matter. That is then objective reality.
Cat. One of the things that I love to say about Schrodinger's cat is that whether you open the box or not, the cat is either dead or alive. You just know that.
Okay, so my problem...
Hey guys, I gotta jump in real quick and say, I gotta jump off the call, but thanks for having me. So
all right, and hey, and by the way, so two things. First off, say where you're from and where people can find you.
Okay, so yeah, my name is JJ Frederick. You can friend me on Facebook if you want. I also have a Twitter at Real Sapamirat. That's a weird name I got from years ago. I'm also on Abstractions on YouTube, and the web development director for Roads to Freedom Foundation. Keep an eye on Roads to Freedom Foundation for a lot of cool events that we're gonna have coming. So
all right, and the second thing is I'll be doing content for Roads to Freedom as soon as it's up. So I'll be doing a weekly show explaining one or another anarchist and/or general economic concepts that would lead to freedom. So I'll be doing that. And fuck you, Facebook, because I win. People who have been in this stream, who've been tagged in the post, can see what I've been doing. I found out a way around their bullshit, fucking faggot ass little piece of shit motherfucking algorithm.
Don't tell them.
They already know.
Jeremiah.
What? Oh, I hate it so much. I hate it so much. I hate their algorithm. I hate the fact that they were partially funded by Keyhole, which is a CIA venture capital firm. I hate that they are so fucking dumb. I tagged people in an actual text post.
On Facebook campus.
I tagged people in a text-based post, and I posted the stream in the comments. Fight me, motherfuckers! I will win.
You will find every route.
Did Jeremiah just have a moment of rage? I think Jeremiah might have just had a moment of rage.
Oh yeah, and also full disclosure, Dean runs one of the networks that syndicates my weekly radio show. So if you want to go check it out, you can check it out on his site.
Oh. Yeah, Dean, at some point you're gonna have to share with me when you're running, like when regularly you run Fagcast, because I wouldn't mind joining it at some point if I can make it.
It's not me. It's Bird Archist and Car Campit. Those guys, that's their show. I was just on it once.
Yeah, hold on, while I'm plugging things, I'll plug that too. I'm gonna be on Fagcast tomorrow. They're recording an episode with me.
Oh, cool, man.
So
it's a great show. Bird and Car are hilarious dudes. It's a really good show.
Yeah,
I did want to say I've also got a segment that's going to start going on Fagcast called Conan the Destroyer. It's where I take different ideas, topics, subjects, and individuals and current events, and I crush them. It's going to be fun.
Yes!
Beautiful, mate. But yeah, Dino, which one do you run?
Facebook, otherwise we won't see it.
Oh yeah. Or just use the Jeremiah technique and fucking tag them in text.
I'm the I run the Dino File show, and I'm the administrator of Alternative Internet Radio. There's 3 current shows on Alternative Internet Radio, the whole network. So that's that thing. I run Dino Files. That's my show.
Fair enough. Some point I'll have to try and catch you on that one if it's at a time when I'm awake. Obviously.
Probably, if you're in the UK, it probably won't be today, because after this show, I have to do my show.
Fair enough. When do you normally do your show? On a Sunday?
Well, there's been some shit that's gone down, so my schedule's been way off. But I try to get it done on weekends in the early evenings, afternoons.
Yeah, and I do mine on I record mine on Tuesday, and I send it out for syndication for the middle of Wednesday Eastern time, and also, like, my plan after this personally, I'm gonna have an hour workout because I need to work out some of this shit. That's a
good idea.
I'm normally angry, and this has made me like about double, triply angry, and also now that I fucking won, I'm very, very ecstatic and angry at the same time. So I'm extangry. So
extangry. My recommendation: find the most useful thing you can do after this, and just do it.
I'm gonna lift my body weight until my arms shake.
That'll work. But yeah,
what are we talking about?
We were talking about feminism, if I believe. Can we extend it, though? Can we extend it to cover all social justice warriors? Because, to be quite frank, they're equally bad.
Well, because, see, here's the thing. We should do that particular thing on a completely different stream. We should expand it, because we've got 3 hours of content fucking with social justice. And, you know, this one has one of this channel's only downvotes, so clearly we're doing something right.
That's probably a bot as well, tagging you for the anti-feminism. Still a view, though. Still counts.
Yeah, it's still engagement.
But yeah,
there's no such thing as bad publicity, especially on YouTube.
But yeah,
there's no such thing as bad publicity ever, anywhere, at all, for any cause. If you want your shit out there, you can go for the bad shit, the good shit, all the shit. You just want all of it, right? No such thing as
how many people were exposed to the Libertarian Party when a streaker ran on the stage? I mean, it didn't help.
Yeah, and that streaker actually was running for a position.
To be fair, he didn't run on the stage. I just want to be clear. He didn't actually run on the stage. It's much worse than that. He was invited to speak. And they actually let it go on and thought it was worse until the banana hammock came out.
You know, I think I actually tagged him in the post about this, but we're Facebook friends, and I completely endorse what he did, because the Libertarian Party's already a fucking joke.
Mm.
I mean,
what he did, I think it's hilarious.
Well, I mean, look, they took a term that was already a right-wing term co-opted from the left. They took that term and like ran with it to sort of not distill it but water it down and turn it into this milquetoast bullshit, and then like they're surprised they don't get votes, much less any political power. And then like the people in charge, I have no doubt, are working with the elites to just make anybody but the Democrats and Republicans look as bad as fucking possible, because the only thing they ever do is elect the most terrible milquetoast bullshit people, and then like beyond that have a quote debate stage that's just circle jerking and or people not answering questions voluntarily. I mean, realistically, Gary Johnson should have never been able to get the nomination when he said the non-aggression principle went over his head. Fuck that fuck that
non-aggression principle is like the simplest level of ethics.
Right.
Yeah.
And but fuck that non-libertarian. We're talking about a non-libertarian. He wanted to ban burqas. He's okay with forcing wedding cakes. He's anti-free market. He's anti-freedom. The only thing he is somebody who wants to be able to smoke pot before he goes on one of his famed bike runs. And he just calls people pussies. He's not good at anything except being insane looking and dumb looking at the same time. And the Libertarian Party keeps on putting him at the front. Why? Well, I have no fucking clue, but I do have this cynical notion that they're probably doing it because they're working with the elites to make alternatives seem like dumb things, which is why they wouldn't allow somebody like McAfee at the forefront who actually had different ideas, or Daryl Perry who had different ideas at the same time as having also really stable presentation, because they're fucking idiots or they're terrible. Or both.
From a political science perspective, Gary Johnson was a very successful governor. So it makes sense that the Libertarian Party would put him at the front, because if you look at his record as governor, it's incredible. He ran one of the most successful periods in one of the most successful periods of New Mexico's government.
But he doesn't represent anyone.
No, I agree. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying from a political science perspective.
From that political science perspective.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, if you're trying to do representative politicking, he doesn't work for most people.
Agreed. However, I think the point Dino's trying to make is that if you're trying to find a candidate, you're trying to run numbers. Because remember, politics is basically just a very polite form of gambling to decide how everybody lives their life.
And what a candidate thinks doesn't matter.
Yeah, what anybody thinks doesn't matter. Is what the bureaucracy is going to do.
I mean,
that's what's going to happen.
Politics isn't that nice. Politics is a minstrel show distracting the public from the fact that the elites still run everything in the background, no matter who's in front.
That's kind of what I'm saying, though, mate. The politicians are there as a bauble for society to be. Think of society as a cat, and politicians are a toy mouse that the elites are basically dangling in front of the cat to just make it bad every now and again. And when a politician gets ratty, then they substitute it for a new toy.
Okay, but that's a really nice way to put it. I think it's really more a popularity contest with a murder auction in the background.
Oh yeah, that is what it actually is in reality. But I'm trying to lead people into this gently, mate. If you basically scar them into this, they'll reject it immediately, because this is how people work.
You fucking murderer!
Exactly. If you basically present to them that they are complicit with mass murder, which is technically true because they voted for these people and all this other stuff, you can come up with a number of validations that mean you support mass murder if you support politics of any kind. And it is something that most people, when they initially think about it, it doesn't matter how logical, how reasonable, how nice they are, they will balk, they'll get angry, they won't want to talk to you about it anymore, ever again, because they know you're right.
That's one of the reasons.
But they don't want to admit it.
The only time that I will do that is when, and it's happened a couple of times with a couple of different people over the last few days, actually. is when somebody says, like, especially with what's going on with immigration and stuff right now in the U.S., there's a lot of people who are saying, like, if you voted for this guy or that guy or whatever, or for Trump specifically, you're complicit in ripping families apart and blah, 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 blah. And a lot of times it's coming from liberals. One of my favorite things to do is point out hypocrisy. And so I'll go into the comments and I'll just post a picture of Abdurrahman al-Alahi and just say, so I should call you about this? My point being the same point that Rothbard made, which is that we are not our government and our government is not us. It's two different things. And I don't particularly, I'm going to be, this may sound soft, but I do not necessarily blame people for wanting to participate in their political system.
I mean, let me put it this way. I mean, I'm not going to blame somebody with as much severity for going off and killing a huge amount of people if the reason they did it was because they were programmed to be a murderer by MK Ultra, and you know, they were triggered by the same Carpenters song they used to play, you know, when they were dosing them with LSD, you know. But at the same time, I'm not going to say that there's zero blame there, because that person probably supported the state at one point. Everybody's got a hand in it. And in doing so, in saying that, in being consistent, I have to say I'm fucking complicit too. I have blood on my hands. I have blood on my fucking hands, and it comes from the rivers of blood which will descend from the corpse pile the elites will build to have their cult meetings at the top of. This is going to end very, very poorly, and I'm part of the reason it's going to. I mean, I'm much more sympathetic to people who are trying to get away from it, but at the same time, I'm still not going to say there's zero. I understand what you're saying, though. I am kind of harsh, but I don't know. I'm getting subs, so.
Jeremiah, I'll make a quick rebuttal to that, mate. Have you voted?
This year?
No, I mean at all. Ever.
Yes, and that means I'm complicit.
All right, fair enough. All right, I didn't realize.
Oh, I was okay. Here's the thing: I was a fucking neocon in high school. I said glass Iran, and I said Bush did nothing wrong. I was a fucking idiot and a fucking stooge and a fucking sheep, and that's one of the reasons I treat myself more harshly than anybody else. It's one of the reasons I've become a solipsist, because in admitting how many things I got wrong, I realized I could have gotten reality wrong too.
That's one of the things that I was a big L libertarian when by the time that I came of political age, I was already a big L libertarian, but that went away pretty quick. Yeah, it's one of those things that I personally don't blame people who want to participate in their political system, simply because, just like everybody else, they were told to pray to Skycloth when they were 5 years old, and all the way up through the rest of their life.
Or more like they were told to pray to Mammon, which was hiding behind the Skycloth.
Well,
that's the thing, and so you're
6 one, half a dozen of the other.
Yeah, right. So
you mean 66601?
But that's the thing, is that you're forced. It's genius. It's genius because it looks so good. It looks so good to participate. It looks so good to do your civic duty. It looks so good, and it feels so good. It's a great way to justify whatever moral thing is going on in your life. It's moral self-licensing. It's I participate in politics, so I'm a good person. I care, and you're told to think this from the time when they tell you.
It's a beautiful piece of theater, mate. That's all it is. It's a fucking. And
I don't blame people for going along with it. I really don't.
Me neither. I can't, because they have been programmed to, from pretty much the minute they enter into a public. How many people here have actually been to public school?
Oh, I
all the way through.
Okay, had some benefit as I had the ability to sing. I was able to get into a very good private school in DC. I basically got exposed to both politics, the elite, and got their training. And this is part of the reason why I was bullied, is because I wasn't one of these really rich kids who did this. I'm getting in through scholarships and all sorts of stuff, and through a lot of hard graft from my mother to make sure that I could get there. And the thing is that I never voted, and it wasn't really instilled in me. I understood civics, but it wasn't really taught in the same way. It wasn't really made out to be the end all be all sort of thing. We were taught history and how America was formed, and basically were given textbooks that tried to be a bit unbiased about things. So they'd present two different opposing things as truth, and you had to work out which one was real. And some people could and some people couldn't, and it was a little bit more interpretive. But when they got it right,
I'm fascinated by what you're saying, because without giving away too much, I have recently finished training at a state level for a certification to teach civics.
Interesting. Okay.
And
are there any private high school classes?
For private's different, especially here. You don't have to be you don't have to be certified to teach certified in a specific field to teach at a private school. That's just for public schools. This state actually really leaves private schools alone. And a lot of the private schools sort of make their own rules. So like they can require that you have a certification, and most do, but some don't. But in order for me to get my certification, I have to teach for a year anyway. I have a probationary year I have to get through because I didn't go to college for it. I did it outside of university. I did my cert. So, but I've seen my point being, I've seen the list of requirements that you have to teach kids. I have it. It's saved as a doc on my desktop. It's the list of requirements that you have to teach students. These are the things you have to hit. And some of the things in there are antithetical to my personal philosophy, but many of the things aren't. Actually, I was surprised to find that it wasn't as indoctrination heavy as I'd expected. Of course, this is also Texas, but it wasn't as it wasn't as indoctrination heavy as I had expected it to be. There's some in there, but it's not. There's nothing outside of what is fact, because the point of the civics class isn't to teach you political theory; it's to teach you political practice. It's this is how the system works, and or works ideally, I suppose. I just wanted to say.
I hope you know your shit, bro. Don't be like one of those teachers who's like, "Yeah, this is totally how it works," and explain exactly not how it works.
Like, no, dude. I got my degree in political science, not in education. So.
Oh wait, me and you had that debate about the Constitution and everything like that. How, or me and you were talking to that one lawyer guy. And about the workings of it, and so you do know your shit. Never mind. I'm my bad.
That's part of the reason that I didn't feel bad going into teaching, is because it's like I know what I'm fucking talking about. I don't have to I don't have to go in there and indoctrinate kids to think one way or the other in order to tell them what is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's good. That's a positive. Like, I don't know why I thought that you didn't know your shit. I was like, wait, no, me and you had that discussion.
No,
like,
it's a reasonable doubt. It's a reasonable doubt to have. There's a lot of teachers. Hell, my civics teacher in high school didn't know a goddamn thing. It was basically my civics teacher in high school, my civics class, my government class, was basically just a liberal indoctrination class, and the same was true.
State-sponsored babysitter.
Well, so this is what I wanted to find out. This is what I wanted to find out. What were you taught? Because this is the kind of thing that I think is actually driving how this works, because it's infiltrated the schools. All of these, the feminism, the you must be a misogynist kind of view of things, the protesting, the fact that the protesters don't get punished and anybody who speaks out against them gets basically pilloried. And I mean, it drives me bloody crazy.
That actually happened to me more in college. And now having seen behind the curtain of it and knowing what is expected to be taught, knowing the things that you have to teach these students and stuff like that, it's not necessarily the fact that it's the state. It is the resource.
No, it is the state. No, it's the state, because the state puts those regulations on the school. Either on a local level, on a higher level.
I think what he means is the regulations aren't causing it. It's an ideology which causes it.
Just based on the lists, the lists of things that you have to teach students, it's not that. It's not. It just isn't. And some teachers will take it and do it that way, but actually the greater source of indoctrination for these kids, especially in civics, is resources. It's the textbook creators. It's the
bingo.
Okay, gotcha. Okay,
it's got
because there's one centralized source for that, isn't there? Practically, it's like one or two companies.
There is. It's called Pearson. They make everything, and
that was it.
So that was the thing. That was one of the things I was most fascinated to find, looking behind the curtain and actually training to be a state teacher, is these requirements that we have to teach aren't actually all that indoctrination-y. It's pretty much all fact-based stuff. The stuff that that is more devious actually comes from the resource creators. It comes from Pearson, and it comes from like Google with their Chromebook program, and it comes from those sources. The resources that you're expected to use as a teacher. It's not necessarily the state's requirement of what you have to teach, because in a lot of places you don't even really have to use the textbook. You can build your own curriculum so long as it hits the points.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. So it's just a heavily bias of the things that they have available.
Right. It's the bias of the. It's very often the bias of the, and that's where the elites are. The elites are at Pearson.
Ooh,
the elites are.
And so if the elites are at Pearson, and there's also state sanctioned, like you must do this to meet the requirements, the state is responsible for the indoctrination of the students still.
Well, to a certain extent. I just want to be very clear that in the list of things that you have to teach, very little of it is what I would call.
Let me make something clear though. I'm a conspiracy theorist. I'm an asshole. I get it. But I'm going to say this, and I'm going to be very specific and very clear when I say that the corporations which work with the state, which get direct regular state funding, and the professors which boost their ability to do that, and the book manufacturers, and the school district, even the lunch lady, they're all state agents. They're all state agents because they're all boosting the state's narrative, assisting the state in indoctrinating kids. This public-private distinction is very, very loose when you look at things on a very interconnected level. And when you start doing that, when you start like doing what Ministry suggested and connect the goddamn dots, when you start doing that, you realize that they're all state agents. They're all fucking feds, and they all deserve to lose their jobs.
To a certain extent, a lot of people. I mean, look, I'm behind this curtain. And Jeremiah, you've known me for a long time,
right?
That I'm behind this curtain. I can tell you for a fact that I think you might be. This isn't a critique on you. You could be right, but I think that from my perspective, you might be attributing to malice what can simply be attributed to ignorance.
I mean, but are they? I didn't assign a motive there, man. What I said is that they're complicit and that they're working together. I'm saying
Yeah,
I'm saying that whether it's malicious or ignorant, most of these people are acting directly in the interest of the state. They're not even working against it, which means they're state actors.
sure.
I don't
Yes,
see a
absolutely.
fundamental or reasonable distinction.
There's
last week,
what's up, Finian?
last week, Jeremiah, you called me out for using that term conspiracy theorist, and I will do the same to you this evening,
no.
friend.
I see. I just don't like the negative connotation. If you're going to use it, own it. That's what I said.
Gotcha. Because you do not believe in anything that's unreasonable. And as a private investigator, I know that you don't believe in anything that's unreasonable. So a lot of people take that term as a negative, and you're right. It should not be. You're seeking to verify and further the truth, and that's what we all should be doing.
Yes, agreed. But I did want to make that clear that I have had a weird change of, actually I've had a string of changes of perspective over the last few months, which is great. I feel like I'm still growing. But
That's good.
that was one thing that shocked me, was that when I downloaded the Teaks and I read through these pages and pages of Teaks for the government class and for civics, I was shocked to see that most of it was pretty much just fact-based. Of course, it was accepted fact-based, so it's like it all exists within the realm of popular political science, and I don't put anarchism within that. So it, to a certain extent.
But that's the point I was making.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. So it all fits within the realm of popular political science, but the real indoctrination stuff comes from, like I said, groups like Pearson and stuff like that work with, Pearson works very closely, very specifically with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Yeah.
Right.
And can I quickly interject here? Because I have to concur with that. The teaching that I got in private school was quite different to what we would read in the material. And in a lot of cases, we were asked to read other materials, root source materials, to be precise. Right. And in those situations, the textbooks were there to discuss the evidence that was presented in the classroom. And then other evidence would also be presented. And then the students basically pretty much made up their own minds as to what really happened and presented that. And they would be graded based on that.
Yeah, that is an interesting distinction, because that is a difference between private school and public school. Public school, you are required. The reason you have a list of things that you have to teach is because that's the list of questions that's going to be on the test. Yeah. And you have to basically just hit those points and make sure the kid can barf them back out. Like, that's the problem with public school, is that it's all based on testing.
Well, yeah, and
that's also the problem in private school.
That allows for indoctrination, though. So because you have to hit all these certain points, you are only allowing those certain points to be taught. You see? Like, that's the problem. Like, you're going to have indoctrination with it because you have to hit those certain points.
Yeah. And the main problem is actually the standardized testing rules to get into universities. Because if you go to a place like, if you go to Britain to try and get an education, your standardized test scores are actually not going to get you that far. It's quite problematic because British, like a high-end school like Oxford or Cambridge, for example, would require you to have a 1600 grade point average, a private school education, probably a 4.0 GPA throughout high school. I mean, you're looking at ridiculous requirements for U.S. education because they don't think they're smart enough. They just don't.
Depends. And let me just take this moment to thank Oxford Dictionaries for being the closest etymologically sound of any dictionary out there.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm just a dumb, like, for sure, dude. Like, my grades in school were jack shit, probably because I thought for myself a lot. I don't know. Either that or I'm a jackass. I'm probably a jackass. I'm gonna default that I'm stupid. But
mine weren't great either. It's
best to default that you're stupid, just because then you know you've got something to learn. But you probably were, if you were in private school, you might have actually done a lot better, simply because you would have been more challenged. You seem, to be fair, you and Dean seem very, very intelligent to me. And one of the major problems with public schooling, and this is my opinion, and there is a fair amount of empirical data to back it,
If you're going to
who
say
are
the words
high,
lowest common denominator, you are absolutely correct.
yes,
What was that?
basically
Repeat that?
high-end people. I was going to say it, but in reverse. High-end people do not benefit from the current public school system. It is geared towards the lowest common denominator because that's the one they need to teach to function. That is the minimum
Very
requirement.
few schools that are actually set up to deal with students who are more advanced students than what you would consider to be standard. There are very few schools that have that.
I got put into like IB programs and like AP programs. I got put in like all the honors.
That's what I did
sure,
too.
But like my grades were still the best. So I was like, this is fucking stupid. And like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. Either I'm being a complete idiot, which I never doubt. I can always be stupid. I assume I am. I assume I'm like the biggest idiot in the world. But
that's wisdom. According to Socrates, that is wisdom. Assume you are an idiot. Yeah. According to Socrates, you are wise because you assume you are wrong. I assume I'm wrong as pretty much every single time. I just then critique what other people say. I then give my argument and wait for somebody to prove me wrong.
And hey, I have a first principle that I might not even exist, so there's that part too.
Yeah, you take it that one step further that I'm not quite willing to take because I'm slapping myself here. I exist, damn it.
okay,
prove it, sucker.
As an existentialist, I have a hard time making that leap as well.
And I'd rather have leaders who are ethical that are not necessarily erudite. Intellect is not, of course, the end all. I'd much rather somebody be ethical.
That's absolutely
well, of course, because this goes to a principle I somewhat regularly discuss, which is that logic does not denote ethics, because you have if you can be logical and still be logical about your approach to an unethical thing, that doesn't necessarily mutually exclude. So
yeah, but people argue that ethics and logic are both objective, and I disagree with that on a whole other level. I think that logic is not objective. Logic helps you build to the objective truth. You can't use a tool like logic to if logic is objective truth and we still have yet to find whole truth, we cannot have logic or math for that matter be the objective truth. They are tools to get there. They are tools to let us get to the objective truth. They are
very
not
much
themselves
like
objective truth.
That's exactly
logic
right.
Plus
I find it
data equals objective truth.
to an extent. Absolutely, you have to consider. I mean, again, I love saying this. Whether you open the box or not, the cat is either dead or it's not. But the problem is with objective truth, it's difficult to open the box. The box is hard to open. And so you're left pretty much trying to run data and figure out logically whether or not the cat's dead because the box is locked. That's sort of the way that I see objectivity and reality, is that, yes, there is a real reality. There is inside the box, the cat is either dead or it's living. But
and you can't claim that one thing is like, okay, you can't claim your tool is the objective truth, because that's completely wrong. Your tool is not the objective truth. Your tool helps you get there.
Yeah.
Right.
Logic is just a process. Logic is a process. There's no such thing as my or your logic.
Exactly.
There's only just logic.
Same
it's
with
one
math,
of the reasons why I've never liked
No, exactly.
It's just
and by that standard, why don't you make that additional leap that you could be coding a massive computer somewhere?
Oh, I'm not denying that. I personally am leaning towards the E8 crystal theory.
So you might be a solipsist too.
Does anybody know this one?
I don't think.
No, I don't. I think
not
you're more
with it.
Yeah, I'm not either.
All right, so this is something from a group called Quantum Gravity Research. If you want to learn advanced mathematics, watch their videos. It is painful, but it can really teach you some rather impressive shit on how the universe works. Because it makes a shit ton of sense.
The Science Asylum. He's a YouTuber. He's a small YouTuber. He's actually really fucking good. He talks about quantum physics and everything like that, dude. He's my number one go-to for quantum physics. He makes it fucking so understandable. Like, okay, so quantum physics is pretty much essentially you use math and philosophy together, and it's fucking an amazing birth of awesomeness, right? I fucking love that shit. For some reason, just
quantum
gets me
mechanics
hard.
is the most fucked up thing in existence, and it works. And people don't really, it's like scientists for years have been trying to prove quantum mechanics doesn't work, and all they've done with every single one of their experiments is basically prove it works, and it's weirder than they thought.
Yeah, exactly, dude. It's fucking great. It's amazing. Oh, I love
it's beautiful. And the thing is there's a quantum gravity research did a video called "What is Reality?" Look it up on YouTube. It is freaking amazing because they explain to people how basically the concept of perception, the concept of pixelization of the universe, the whole geometric design of how the universe works, and make a case that the universe has more dimensions than we can perceive because we are within it.
And of course, the fact that string theory and infinite numbers exist means that infinite possible universes must exist to accommodate infinite material.
No. This is one of the things they basically say. String theory is bollocks. They say string theory is bollocks.
String theory is completely bollocks, and I can prove it fucking logically all day.
Why?
String theory is shit.
Why?
Why is string theory shit? Because it assumes that you're always in one place at the same time, or multiple places. It's like trope theory. Okay, it's essentially trope theory with math. You know what trope theory is?
I have no idea.
Do believe so, yes. But explain it to the audience because not everybody's going to be aware of that one.
Okay, so trope theory, what trope theory is that, let's say that someone came up with a new color, right? That color had already existed at all times. And because he didn't invent it, he didn't discover it, it just was. Okay, so it's saying essentially that everything is omnipresent at all times. And string theory goes into the same kind of concept, but it adds a dimension. And that's, to me, weird as shit.
Now, for me, I think the reason there are a number of reasons why string theory hasn't really caught on, and that's like properly as a full science. It's mainly because it doesn't really go anywhere. It basically says,
why not?
Because everything is unmeasurable in string theory, effectively, by the end of it. Well, this is the point, mate. There are more. If you can't come up with a conclusion from the maths, then it's like a perpetual motion machine. It doesn't work. You have to be able to say, right,
motion goes against physics. It goes even against quantum physics too. So
yeah, it goes against all forms of physics. It doesn't work, and you need to have basically every time you create, even in the universe, when matter is created in the void using the Casimir effect, it's destroyed immediately because it isn't supposed to be there. There's a cost to these things, and that cost exists at a quantum level just as much as it exists as a physical level that we experience. And that's the point. What exists at the quantum level can exist for us in a higher dimension at the human level. But at a further higher dimension, there is another level of existence that we don't quite perceive, which is the entire lifespan that we live. And then there's another dimension above that. There's basically 8 dimensions to our existence according to QGR. And it's expressed as a giant crystal lattice in 8 dimensions. And they're trying to use that framework to then define how quantum mechanics works. They're trying to create the grand unified theory. That's their goal. This is not a small goal.
Well, right. They're trying to find the objective reality is what they're trying to do.
Yes, that's what they are trying to do.
But what I'd like
that is the number one goal of science.
What I'd like to know is how this proves that string theory is false.
Well, they basically
prove it's false, but it proves that it has a huge issue.
Yeah, it has huge issues as a theory. That's the point. It has huge issues as a theory. There may be you should look at other theories too to see what's going on. And people in string theory will agree that it has huge issues.
Well, right, but they won't think that it's, quote, bullshit. I'm saying that you shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater just because certain elements of it.
Oh no. I didn't mean to I didn't mean to say that you shouldn't look at it or pay attention to it. Like I'm one of those people who says you should pay attention to everything. Like don't throw any idea out, but just like look at it all. I didn't mean to do that. My bad.
Anybody saying it's the end-all be-all theory is probably not looking at it fully from a more abstract view.
Well, there's no way for that to be an end-all be-all theory, because in the end, there's like, even if it is, you know, certain little rings of strings, then in the end, you're still going to have to find out what those are made of and what the things that those are made of. And, you know, eventually you're just going to end up with too much blank space to even analyze anything. But, you know, at a certain point, like, but what I'm saying is that it's valuable to know and understand that sort of thing, because then if you can manipulate it, you've got new avenues of exploration and possibly new avenues of possible practical application of these things.
This is one of the questions that I have.
My apologies.
I have a question about this though. If you're solipsism, you're talking about questioning your own existence.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. If I do have this question, because I kind of like the notion that in an infinite universe of infinite possibilities, we are definitely in a computer. Like statistically, the likelihood that we are in a computer in an infinite universe of infinite possibilities, the likelihood that we are in a computer is greater than the likelihood that we are not.
Right.
And this is here's my question.
50-50.
All right, here's my question. If that is the case, if we are in a computer, in a simulation, the Matrix is real. If that's the case, what then is a precondition for existence? Because I don't necessarily think that a computer program, especially a conscious one, can be said to not exist. It certainly
exists. See, here's the thing, though. Like, computer simulation theory is only one branch of possibilities within the scope of
understanding that. And I just wanted to focus on that.
We went way off topic, guys. Now we're talking about string theory and shit.
And so the
screw it. We lost the thread about half an hour ago, guys. Honestly, feminism as a topic died because I think we murdered it.
I'd bring it back to acting ethically.
Shoot it again, but yeah.
Let's say that this does exist, or actually, I just shared a link in the group chat for us. The Killer Camper commentary. He talks about more than likely we are all in a simulation, because statistically and mathematically, it's the most logical answer. But even if it is, none of that matters. Your objective in life should be, as always, being consistent and ethical.
Well, right,
whether
and
this is a simulation or not, I don't care. I'm still going to do those good things.
Right, and that's what
happens when I die.
Right, well, that's what I say, though. I say that if this is a simulation, I'm going to high score.
For me, the idea that it's a simulation is actually somewhat appealing because of that E8 crystal theory. We are basically we as a form of existence exist in a higher dimension to what we exist now. And that higher dimension could be, from a layman's point of view, a giant computer program existing as an 8-dimensional crystal that is projected to 4D.
Well, exactly. And here's the thing.
That's the fundamental theory of the geometry of it. And it bases itself on the fact that geometric repetition occurs so frequently within mathematics, there has to be a reason for the pattern. And our brains pick up patterns for a reason. So patterns exist for a reason, therefore we have a reason to see patterns. And the things these scientists have seen is all of things like the golden ratio, 1 over theta, 1 over phi, pi, all of these things keep reoccurring within forms of higher level mathematics and physics.
Yeah. Well, here's also the thing too. Like, if we are in a simulation, we can break the rules of the simulation.
We can rewrite them.
No, you can't. That's the
Why
point.
not?
Why not?
It's not that you break the rules, it's that you use the rules, because the simulation defines your parameters. It says this is what you can and cannot do. That isn't the same thing as a state. It's basically
maybe.
if you jump out of a plane with no parachute and you hit the ground, there is no probability you will survive hitting concrete.
Plenty of people have, though. I mean, there are plenty of people who
jumping out of a plane at altitude.
That's why I said concrete. You added the concrete for purpose.
but you've got to, like, if you spread yourself out, and if you like get a bunch of air on the way down so that you don't streamline yourself, yeah, there's a possibility. But either way, the point is that, like, I think you're assuming that the simulation has rules that are incontrovertible instead of rules that are possibly designed by additional imperfect beings, because there still has to be an impetus for this existence. There has to be an original creator before any simulation can exist, and that infinite creator might very well be just as imperfect as anything else.
Well, he has to be. There can't be a perfect entity.
But that's assuming there's a creation. The thing to keep in mind, though, is that we're players, we're not the coders. So,
well, right.
Crazy,
but there are bugs all the time.
Bitch, I am Agent Smith. I don't give a fuck.
Look, from my perspective, it's not the Matrix,
but it's unlikely.
Yeah, well, it's not the Matrix.
Well, how do you know?
System. If you develop, I do have one possible solution for this. If you develop a system, and that system becomes significantly intelligent to edit its own code, that is the singularity. So,
true.
Could we, in fact, be a super intelligent system that is, if not yet, then on its way to the ability to edit its own code?
We are editing our own code every day. Everybody does. That's how the brain works. This is why I've been writing about how the brain functions in a very top abstract level, because I tried to get this stuff down so I could understand it better myself and make sure that I got it. And the principal ideas were that your brain basically will, if you remember something, one of the things Jordan Peterson talked about was if your memory serves a certain purpose, and that is to extract meaning from what you have experienced before. And once you have dealt with the memory fully and extracted everything you can from it, you're done with it. It can be erased. It can be written over. It'll basically be fuzzed out for most people. And the way memory works is when you don't need to know something anymore, it gets overwritten. You are overwriting that bit of data, at least.
There's neuroplasticity plays a factor there as well.
Yeah, but you can also overwrite your code, because if you couldn't, people who are programmed to believe into the state would not then become anarchists because they see the logical incongruities and reject that enforced code.
So you think I can rewrite my life by offing it, right? I can rewrite my own code.
No, it's more. I'm not talking about offing it, although technically that's another way of basically an element of the program deciding, nope, I'm not having this. But most, an anarchist, for example, a self-destructive program. But a normal person who comes to these conclusions will then go, this design, this architecture that's been put in place doesn't work. I need to find a different form of architecture to work with in order to make my code work. And they can go any number of different ways, and the best fit is the one they will pick. A lot of people go libertarian, a lot of people verge off even further to the right, and some of us actually work out voluntary action sees you through. but it's all, in the end, we are just organic computers. We work exactly the same as any computer does. It's just we have the ability to overwrite our own code.
That
Right,
makes
the program allows for reprogramming.
right.
Yeah.
That actually makes what you're saying there actually
Firmware.
makes communism and Nazism. I want to say fascism, but I mean more of a national fascism. It makes communism and Nazism and the logic behind it make more sense. Not legitimate sense, but it makes it like understandable. Where if you are a
how
computer,
people can come to those conclusions.
yeah,
Yeah, I
if
know
you
how
are
they do
a
it, for
computer
sure.
trying to, if you're a system and you're trying to make sure that your system works flawlessly, then collectivism is a very natural result of that thought process. If you were to
Yes.
say that you want everybody to be alike, which is the end result of the ideal of communism and of nationalized fascism or socialism, is purity. Communists want purity of ideology. They don't necessarily care about skin tone.
No,
And
they care about ideology.
Yeah, they
Right.
don't. They
And-
have no concept of human flaw, like so, at all. They don't think
Right.
that
No.
human flaw exists, and they don't believe. Okay, the thing about that really kind of drives me nuts, and I actually had one of my shit opinions on Twitter. One of the things I did, like 1 equals a fucking shitty opinion, because I got fucking bored.
Mhm.
It's fun to do though.
Yeah, it is. One of my opinions was I find it fucking hilarious when communists say, but real communism hasn't been tried, because they don't fucking realize that utopias can't exist. And they want utopia because they don't fucking realize that there's human flaw. They have to account for human flaw, which they do not.
Right. There's no accounting for there's no accounting for anything outside of collective ideology and universalization of that ideology. That's the thing that I'm kind of getting at, is that if you're trying to make a system, be as if you're trying to make a system work as perfectly as possible, think about it like gears. You want all of the teeth of all of the gears to fit together perfectly and move at the exact ratios to make the thing you want to happen. If the thing you want to happen is called society, the best way to get society to its most efficient is to have all the gears fit together perfectly to make that happen. The problem is,
You have to indoctrinate the people in order to get it to go that way.
No, you don't. That's the thing. That is the common misconception. The problem is that people think society is like a clock or a machine, but it really isn't. It's much more complicated than that. I'd say society is a massive quantum computer. That is how complicated this fucker is. It is the only quantum computer that currently exists, and it only has existed since the internet came to existence. Because without the internet, we wouldn't be able to share these communications effectively. I'd be here in the UK, you'd be over there. I wouldn't really be able to coordinate any of this shit without the internet. No, none of us would.
Yeah.
And
that philosophy.
Go on.
I'm sorry, continue.
No, you go on, mate. I'll cut in a minute, and I think we're coming to.
It's interesting because that philosophy works backward also. There is a theory in sociology that that the reason for increased empathy, which we do see with measurable results in human society now, empathy is going up. That the increase in human empathy began with literature. That the ability to communicate complex ideas, or I shouldn't say literature, I should say literacy. That the ability to communicate complex ideas through writing was the beginning of what the internet exemplifies. This kind of communication over distance and with people, with different kinds of people. There's an idea that 400 years ago, I'm sorry, it's not 400, it's 4,000. 4,000 years ago, the amount of information that a person would absorb would be roughly equal to one edition of the New York Times over their entire lifetime.
Wow.
So with the advent of literacy, we are able to absorb more and more and more information over time, to the point that we've now built the fucking internet, which is literally just a place for information to live.
Yeah.
So
and
it's a fascinating theory. I love that theory. I love that, because that does tie in with that sociological idea.
I wholeheartedly agree with that theory. I think it is empirically, I think you can find empirical evidence that proves that theory. In fact, I think I know that it exists because society has evolved over time. Yes, I know that some people say, well, civilization is what created literature. So, okay, yes, civilization did help create the foundations of writing, but that doesn't mean writing couldn't exist without civilization.
Well, there's
necessity is the mother of
communications
invention.
in general. Yeah, it's just communication in general, because animals even communicate. Like, and they communicate with us too. So
language as a whole developed as a means to communicate the more complicated thoughts that were occurring in the developing prefrontal cortex of proto-humans.
Yeah, I mean, that even includes body language as well.
Exactly.
It includes every kind of form of communication.
I struggle with body language because you have to be certain when you're reading body language, and I always assuming that I should be uncertain about practically everything in the universe because I shouldn't be assuming I'm right about anything.
Except that your existence is the way you are. You'll go hard in the paint.
Except what I can prove empirically. That's the only thing I'm willing to go for.
Well, hey, prove empirically that you exist without using metrics that would be like, you know, okay, because solipsism is, I guess I shouldn't phrase it that way. Solipsism is the idea that the only thing that which can be proven to exist is the self, and that's
what I'm saying. I exist. You're all a figment of my frickin' imagination.
That might be.
Agreed.
You know,
I mean, at least at least insofar as what you can prove.
Yeah, so far as what I can prove. Until I've touched you guys, you don't really exist.
But hey, someday
I've had some dark shit go down in my life pretty recently. I think I might have had a psychotic break. I'm not even doing this right now.
Ooh.
Yeah. But
we're not gonna go down the road of do you exist or not. Okay, we're not gonna go through that.
Let me be specific. I'm hoping that this stream was effective in convincing at least one person that that feminism is cancer. That's what I hope. That would be my high score today. But if it didn't leave a message in the comments and let us know what we can talk about at some other point to convince you specifically, because this has gone on for now 3 hours and 10 minutes. And I think it.
Oh, you try to keep it to 3 hours, huh?
Yeah, well, because that way maybe next shit shooting Sunday we can get into this further, but it'll be in the end when it's already starting to trail off. Now two things. The next two shit shooting Sundays. The first one will be on U.S. imperialism, and the next one will be on militarized police. So be sure to be there. I've already got several people interested in being there on the stream for both, and it should be a really rip-roaring good time if you're into that sort of thing, if you're that kinky. But those two will be there, and also I do a stream, because apparently some people didn't know, every Wednesday, which is a news stream, and that's also 3 hours. So if anybody wants to bring news stories to Real News Wednesday that have happened since last Wednesday, let me know, and I'll send you a link when you want to show up. What were you going to say, Dean?
I wanted to say, if you're going to be talking about militarized police, may I suggest Liberty Weekly's episode on the topic? Because it is great. It's old. It's a fairly old episode at this point, but my God, is it good?
I mean, if they want to come on and discuss their episode, I might well do that. But mostly, I'm gonna have the guests come on and discuss it from their own perspective, like we did today. I'm not.
I just mean if you're interested. I just mean if you're interested in the topic.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Topically, that Liberty Weekly episode is really, really good. And I also like to plug Liberty Weekly. They're good dudes.
Well, also, if we're going down that particular path, if anyone wants to brush up on it before then, because they're interested in that, read Radley Balco's Rise of the Warrior Cop. It's a great book. Yeah. It's very short and it's very informative. So if anybody wants to brush up, by all means, read that before 2 weeks from now, and you can have a better grasp on how that's been working in the past.
There's a very good set of articles also on Cato Institute's website, including a raid map of all SWAT team use in the USA over about 30 years worth of coverage as well. So you can see just how much of a problem it's been.
And what site was that? Could you repeat that?
Cato.org/raid map is where it used to be, at least. I haven't checked it in a while. It's used to be updated about every month or so with new events that had occurred. I'm not certain they've been able to keep up with it all.
Yeah, isn't it up to like something like 30,000 SWAT raids a year now? It's completely out of control.
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely insane.
And see, that's the reason I called David Hogg and his friends a craven group of cohorts, because realistically, if they wanted to stop gun violence, they would stop it by stopping the hundreds of people killed by police a month, or the thousands of civilians, like in conservative estimates, maybe tens of thousands at this point, killed in the war on terror by troops. They would oppose those gun deaths because those are actually significant compared to the overblown by media numbers of mass shootings in America, which are like less than 50 a month to very generous estimates.
Oh no, so dude, it's like fucking 39 a year.
That's a year.
It's way less. Yeah.
Well, see, and no, what I'm saying is like the amount of people killed by very generous estimates, by the most generous estimates I can find, because I'm trying not to fall into any traps of bias. So I gave the most conservative estimates I could find for the other two, and the most generous estimates I can find for what I'm, ideologically opposing as the most important problem of gun violence here. In terms of the most generous numbers for mass shootings, it's no more than 60 a month. And in terms of the most conservative estimates for police violence, it's no less than 100 a month. And for troop violence, no less than 1,000 a month. And this is averaged out over years and over decades. So, I mean, what I'm trying to say is, like, even if I'm giving them the most leash room here, they're still hanging themselves with it. And, and so I wanted,
that's an excellent point. Penn recently talked about it on, Penn was on Kevin Smith's podcast on Smodcast, and he was talking about that. And of course, you don't want to sound. This is something that is kind of important. You don't want to sound as if kids dying isn't a tragedy. The point that we're making is that kids dying is always a tragedy. That people dying is always a tragedy. Regardless of the source.
Yes.
And so, but that's one of the points that he made, was that statistically, you're safe at school. I mean, from gun violence. Statistically, you're more likely to win the lottery. It's crazy how safe kids are.
Statistically, you're in more danger on the way to school, on the bus, which doesn't have seat belts, in your mom's car, in whatever, because the highway is much more fucking dangerous than the school.
That's one of the things that he said. He was like, don't look out for shooters. Look out for cars. Look out for pools. Look out for bears. Like, all of that stuff is more likely to kill you than...
Look out for alcohol, tobacco. Look out for prescription drugs, your doctor.
No, fuck you. I'm going to smoke. I'm going to drink. I'm going to take those pills because they make me happy. I don't have pills. But...
This is the point, though. There's like hundreds of ways you could die. hundreds and everything's going to die. You're going to die. Deal with it.
I know I am, and it sucks that I haven't yet,
no,
man.
I'm not saying to you. It's no, it hasn't. Fight for every single fucking minute you get, mate. Or a gift.
Agreed.
I'm already immortal. What are you talking about?
Exactly. So am I. We are now, right now, immortal because of this video. As long as it keeps getting spread.
And that's a good segue into the closer to the end of the video, because I'm gonna go on tomorrow on the FAGcast, Friends Against Government cast, for those of you who think it's just a slur or something like that.
No, it's an acronym.
Well, technically, if you want to go there, it's an initialism. Because acronyms have to...
You're right, because you can pronounce an initialism. God damn it.
But either way, I'll be on there. I'll be on there discussing how I'm an immortal elder god who's always been here and who's become sick of the current order, and why I collect chaos emeralds for a living.
I love that. I love that theory that we developed, because it was on that episode that I was on Fagcast that we were talking about the fact that Jeremiah has been around seemingly forever. And it's one of those things. I was first introduced to Jeremiah on Tumblr when I was in high school, way back in the day. It was in the days of Freebler, when that was a thing, and like all that stuff. Yeah. And he already had a following then.
Jesus.
And dude's not that much older than me.
Tell me, did you have a following on MySpace?
Somewhat. You might I don't think I deleted my page, so you might be able to still see some of my cringy music I made.
No, they've changed. I wish, dude. I fucking wish.
I wish.
But when Justin Timberlake bought it, they changed the whole fucking thing. They wiped everything.
Okay.
They wiped my account.
It sucks. I used to love, before Justin Timberlake bought MySpace, I used to love going back and looking at that old bullshit, because all of it was from 8th grade. It was all terrible. And
it was
painful. One of my favorite things in the world. But yeah, once Justin Timberlake bought it, they wiped the whole fucking thing. It sucked.
I don't think I want you guys seeing that. All my monarchist talk.
But hey, anyway,
I'm not ashamed. Don't be ashamed of having been a minarchist. Don't be ashamed of having been a big L libertarian. Don't be ashamed of any of that, because what that tells you, that's important. What that tells you is that
you grew.
It's that you grew, and it tells you that it's not just you. It tells you that developing philosophies and developing ideologies and developing ideas is something that happens over time. This is one of the reasons that I don't like to shit in minarchists or big L libertarians' mouths. It's because these people are where I was. And you can always move forward.
Yeah, Jeremiah,
I
agree. Derek's raging against me was not for nothing.
Yeah. Fair enough. No, I get that, because there are a few, shall we say, that had to beat into my head the idea that I don't need a state to do what I need in my life to be safe. I can get that from the market. Once they finally explained
as well. Yeah.
It really was everything. It always boils down to fear of the unknown,
right?
Because that is the ultimate form of fear. You don't know what's going to happen, and you don't have a solution for it. That's what you need to think of on the fly. So how do you deal with that so you don't have to think of it on the fly? That is what the state is for. That is what the market is for. It's just people have made their minds up at the moment that only the state can provide certain services and certain functions. And that's a false argument, because the market could provide them if they let it. And they don't. For whatever reasons, they just don't. Now, for me, when I was talking about that whole E8 crystal theory and was mentioning about systems within systems, Dino, I think you almost got my theory perfectly, but it's slightly, there's another level. It's a system of the universe which has a set of rules that it's a syntactic language, so
Yeah.
you can play with the rules and you can make code with the rules.
Oh my
but
fuck.
You
Oh my
cannot
God.
make 2 = 3 without adding 1. It's that kind of principle. There are some concepts that you can't do, but there's a lot of flexibility.
Well,
And
let me just say this though. That sounds like a great, like that sort of thing sounds like a great topic for another stream. But we are at 3.5 hours at this point. So,
all right.
Why don't you?
I did just blow my own mind. Let me say one sentence. Because I blew my own fucking mind. Going back to literacy, advent of the empathy wave, all this other stuff. Language is the fucking code.
Yep.
Concepts are the fucking code.
Yeah.
Yep. You get a universal language. You get a universal language, and that's the code.
Right.
Math is supposed to be the code. Math is supposed to be the universal language. But you also can't, like I said earlier, it's not the objective truth. Yeah, exactly.
Binary
so you have to
is
come up with different
universal
ways to do it.
Right. Well, let me be specific. This sounds like something for another stream. So everybody who is
I just blew my own. I just like freaking popped an artery with that. Just I had to say it.
So when I decide to do that stream, I'll let y'all know. But if y'all want to tell people where they can find you, we'll wrap this up.
Yep, you can find me, Lupinate, on Minds at Lupinate. I'm also in the Friends Against Government group on Discord, and on Discord as Lupinate, and as Anarchic Wolf on Steemit, where I've written quite a bit about reality. And if you're really interested in my stuff, you can link out to Google Plus for my personal account with loads of stuff on the brain and other things. From a layman's perspective, mind.
I am Idiot's Query. Whoop. You can go.
You sure? All right. This is Finian. I'm mainly on Steemit these days as at FINNIAN as Finian, and I also have libertyprofessionals.com as a website, and I'm a private investigator and residential security expert. You can find me on sites like Twitter under LibertyProPI, which is, of course, the business account. Thanks for having me, Jeremiah, and great talk, guys. Have a good night.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, cheers, guys.
Have a great one.
Right.
Idiot, go. Idiots, go. Idiots Query.
All right,
go.
I'm Idiot's Query. Yeah, dude, hey, that's my thing. I'm Idiot's Query. I'm the idiot with queries and opinions and shit, and you can find me on Twitter. YouTube is in progress. I am universally Idiot's Query. I'm trying to develop a whole little set of shit to find me on. So if you like me for some godly unknown reason, you can find me there. All right.
That's awesome. I have a question for Idiot's Query and Lupinate both. Are you guys in the, and actually everybody here, actually, are you guys all in the Fadcast Minds group?
I am.
No, I'm not invited to stuff except for Jeremiah's stuff.
Aren't you on the Discord?
He's in Discord, but he's never on. You still haven't actually accepted my invite yet, mate.
Oh, really? Oh, anyway, Dino, plug your shit so we can end the stream.
Yeah. Join the group. Yes, I'm Dino. I do podcasts. I have a show called Dino Files on the Alternative Internet Radio Network. I am on Twitter at Dino Files. I am also on Minds at Dino Files. And I write things at the Rogue File, roguefile.com. I'm going to be streaming my show tonight. So in the next hour or so, I'm going to start dropping posts on Minds and Twitter to invite people to come join the chat and be part of the show. So that would be wonderful if anybody who is here or is listening could come do that, because I love having people in the chat to bounce things off of. Thanks again. Thank you to Jeremiah for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. I might show up next Sunday, but this Sunday I'm already running out of time to do my workout, so I'm gonna do that after this because I gotta get those gains in order to fuck up the government. So,
nah, the last thing I want is for people to feel obligated.
Oh, Jeremiah, quick question. Can we chat after the stream ends?
For a short bit, sure, yeah.
Word.
But okay, looks like that was a fairly successful stream once I got Facebook to comply. So I will be doing this every Sunday. You can find Real News Wednesday. You can find me on the Fagcast tomorrow. I'm gonna be starting up a bunch of shit once I get out of this housemate situation, and I'm also going to be amping up the power. If you have a graphics design job you want done, if you have some sort of voiceover work you want done, there are plenty of things that I do, and you could probably just hit me up to see if I do them. And I should be able to serve whatever needs you have for the right price. But let me know if you want to come on the next streams. The next streams will be on American imperialism and police militarization. So come prepared to smash the state and get put on a few watch lists while you're at it. It's multitasking. If you appreciate the work I do or the streams that I host, feel free to support me on Patreon, even the $1 level. If half of my following did, it would be enough for a comfortable life, devoting myself to anarchist activism. If you would like to assist me in a way that's free, there are plenty in the description, including the Brave browser, including the crypto tab, and including many of the ways in the support link at the very bottom of the description, even if you want to just outright donate something to me, which I would be very grateful for. So feel free to do that if you appreciate any of the things we do. This has been Shit Shooting Sunday, signing out.